folks, welcome back. I'm DaShannon Lovin, your friendly librarian, and I'm back with some book love. Let's chat. Well, you can see it's kind of gotten out of control again. Shocking, I know, but it's early enough today that sun's coming in, so I'm hoping that's going to show up on the video. It is beautiful in the library this early in the morning. So of course I got a little sidetracked this morning reading in here, but now I'm ready to get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about some books that I've read. Let's talk about some books that I've reviewed, some books that there's a lot of book news going on around. There's quite a bit to chat about. I also have a couple of book related gifts that I wanted to show you. This morning I was like, I have got to get to filming that video. As you can see before, my table was really getting a little bit too high. And I thought, oh, but I'm not quite ready. I need to do a couple more book reviews and I've really got to do this. And I'm in the middle of that one book that I want to include. And I'm like, you know what? We are just going to dive into it. And I need to do that more often because I said in my last video, which did extremely well, and I really appreciate you. So if you are one of those people that are out there that are watching my videos or listening to my videos, just thanks again. I know I keep saying that, but I so enjoy doing this. My new mug says, reading is my therapy, and that is so, so true. So I just love whenever people enjoy the videos. I hope that you're getting lots of great recommendations and that it's just feeding into your reading life. So this morning we were just kicking it off with coffee, and I just could not take advantage of the sun that is coming in through the window this morning. I was thinking about doing the video yesterday and it was a little overcast, so when I came downstairs I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'll just read a little more instead. So this morning when I came downstairs, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sun, we've got to take advantage of that. A lady that I work with at school, Rhonda, gave me this mug for an end of the school year. I think it's a survival gift for us, really. But I love this. It's so me. It does say reading is my therapy, and it's that beautiful image. I've seen the image before online, and she had a friend who makes these mugs. So thank you so much, Rhonda. I hope you're listening. Someone mentioned on Facebook that when they were watching my videos that we should have a book club that has to do with the video. I would love to do that. So if you're interested, let me know so I can see if there's enough interest there and we'll start a book club. I've always got the list of books that I've read, books that I've reviewed, books that I'm getting ready to read. And when I'm reading a book, I would love for people to be reading it with me. You know, that's all about the conversation, the community. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. I would love to set that up. My book club that I currently am the most involved in is it's Blanchester Staff and Friends. I guess we don't really have a name. We've tried a couple in the past. None of them have really taken off. So I just always refer to it as my Blanchester Staff and Friends book club. But I started it whenever I was doing my master's in library science as my master's project, and it is just stuck. We started at the school with like 3 or 4 people. And then now we usually are around about 10 to 15, depending on the meeting. And it has just flourished. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that one in this video because we did just recently meet one of the authors that I talk about quite a bit and that I'm reviewing some of her books this month. But yeah, just if you would like to do an online book club, I'm all about that. Let me know. So I always like to start off with the books that I finished since the last video. The last video went out towards the end of May. So we're about a month, I would say right around a month out from that last video. And like I said, it's done extremely well. So I'm really excited that you guys are enjoying these videos. So since the last video, here's what I have finished. The Woman in the Window. I really, really enjoyed this read. Yes, it's a modern thriller, popular fiction, I would say right now. A.J. Finn. This book has been out for a little while. It was published in 2018. It has already had enough time to be turned into a movie on Netflix, which I have yet to watch. I need to watch it before I do the next video. I'll put it on my list of things to do. I always am super excited whenever they turn a book into a movie or a TV series or something like that. Like super excited. I get really excited about it. And then it takes me forever to actually get to watch it. I don't know why that is. I'd say part of it is I'm always afraid that they're going to screw it up. Like I really enjoyed this. I think it was well done. It was very entertaining. That's probably what I would say. Is it great literary writing? No. But is it great thriller writing? Is it very entertaining? Absolutely. So when they turned it into the Netflix movie, then I think I was super excited that they were going to do that. But then after I finished the book, I'm like, ooh, I really, really like this. So I'm just not sure that I'm going to like watching it. So we'll see. I'll put it on my list of things to do. We are big sit down at the end of the day and watch a TV show or a movie. John is not as excited when I put on the murder shows, but I don't know. We'll see. He might like this okay. He really enjoys adventure movies, I would say, whereas I'm always watching some sort of murder mystery. Always, that's what I do. I love midsummer murders. I love those cozy murders, just like I love cozy fiction, but I like adventure and thriller too. So we'll see. I'm a little, I feel like this one has not gotten great reviews on the show, but I'm so excited that I finally did finish the book by A.J. Finn. In one of my previous videos, I shared an article that I had also shared on my social media about A.J. Finn. Ridiculously crazy story about this author. His life is definitely stranger than fiction, and not in a great way, but super great read. I love articles. I love reading online articles just as much as I love reading books. Is that sacrilege? I hope not. But that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to read this book, and I loved it. So I'm gonna say 4 out of 5 stars on this. I'm not a huge fan of giving the star system out there because I read books more as I think probably a librarian. One of the main reasons I read is because I love to recommend. I love sharing the love of reading. I think everybody should be reading multiple books at all times. I know it doesn't always work out like that, but I do. I think you should always have a book that you could pick up. I think, I could go on for the next 45 minutes. I should not do that. But I could go on for the next 45 minutes about why I think it's important to read. It is not just for entertainment. I think it's super good for our brain, just like I should be out there running a mile every day, which I don't, but I do walk my dog, but probably a little too slowly. But I think that that's exercise for your brain, and reading all different kinds of writing, fiction, nonfiction, articles, novels. I just think all of those things make my brain healthier. And so that is one of the main reasons that I read, and that I hope you do too. So one of the main reasons that I do like to read is so that I recommend. I really like being able to tell you, hey, you know what book I think you're gonna like? And then somebody coming back later and saying, you were right, I love that book, or I didn't really like that. What didn't you like about it? And then talking to them about that, and then handing something else to them. Like, I am a librarian through and through. I'm bleeding literary love. I love to help connect people with something that they enjoy doing. And I think the other part of that too is that as we're in 2021, it's a weird, crazy time. We are all struggling. I don't think that I'm making any great revelation there. We are struggling. And so I want you to have something that you enjoy. I want to have something that provides stress relief for you. I want to have something that you're looking forward to. There are so many things that we are not looking forward to these days. Reading should be one of those things that at the end of your day or at the beginning of your day, it's something that's feeding you. It's something that you know you are going to enjoy that time, and that it is therapy, free therapy. All right, so I should probably talk to you about the book. Yes, it is another unreliable narrator. How about we do that? You want to try that? I'm sure that's not going to work, but we have another unreliable narrator here. I would say my unreliable narrator book, the first one that always comes to mind is Gone Girl. I was not a huge fan of the book Gone Girl. I did love the movie. I appreciate the book. But my biggest struggle is not having a character that I like in a book. I realized that a long time ago. And, there are people in this book that I'm rooting for. The main character, I am rooting for her. So that helps me out. Even though she may be unreliable, I feel like that she should be listened to, right? I also love Alfred Hitchcock movies. And The Rear Window is one that is always talked about, and it's a fabulous one. It's a great classic that most people, I think, have either heard about or watched, so maybe put that on your to-watch list. I don't know. I don't think that it would go over real well if I tried to put that on the TV at night for John and say, oh, look, let's watch this movie tonight. But maybe I'll try it. I'll let you know how that one works out. But this is very reminiscent of that. Again, it goes back to there's nothing new under the sun. Things are done over and over and over again. A lot of the storylines that we read have classic roots somewhere, so I would definitely say this is rooted in The Rear Window. It also has some feeling of like The Girl on the Train and Gone Girl, like all of those kind of feed into this. So You know, if you're one of those people that if you like this, then try this or try this or try this. Those are some I would definitely say that you should put on your list. It's a definite psychological thriller. The main character is having a lot of issues. It takes a little while. I love that the author does not come right out and tell you what's going on, but that you are pulled into her world and you instantly know there's something not quite right and that there's more to the story, but it takes a while to get that story. I love that. That's very natural. The narrator is struggling with some of her own personal demons when she is looking out her window in a very busy neighborhood where she can see a lot of the neighbors and what's going on from her window. But even in her own house, she has a boarder, David, who's staying in like a downstairs apartment kind of thing. So there's a real interaction there with him. And then the family across the street, she starts actually interacting with them in real life, not just watching them through the window. But something is definitely not quite right. That's where the page turning comes in. She also has a very active online life. She has agoraphobia. I think that's how you say it. We're going to go with that, where she really struggles stepping across that threshold of her house and going out into the real world. But some of her neighbors do come in and visit with her. Her therapist comes in and visits with her. And so through those interactions, that's how the story starts unfolding. The people that she is interacting with online, she is giving them support. They struggle with the same illness, the agoraphobia. Sorry about that. The way that the book is set up is it is dated, but it's not necessarily a diary. You just know what day these things are happening. So I always like that kind of format. It's happening from like October to November, so a pretty short period of time. She does go back and you find out what has happened that has led up to her struggling with this. And when that happens, that's when you realize, ooh, I am not sure that we can totally take her for her word at what she's watching, because what happened to her, she isn't coming right out and saying. She is dancing around when people ask questions that are related to what has been happening in her past. She dances around that and tells like half truths. So I get where the unreliable narrator comes in, but again, I mean, like, I really like her. I think she's totally relatable. Once you realize what had happened to her previously, you're like, well, I would probably make up my own version of reality too to help myself get along. But once something happens outside of her window and she tries to report that, then people start calling her on, hey, I mean, you aren't really telling the truth about this, so how can we believe that what you think you saw is real? So just a real great thriller, page turner. Definitely, you know, if you are not the beach reader where you want to read some beach romance, whatever, but you like a page turner that you want to be able to get done in a couple of days, this one's an easy one. I mean, I think I read it in 3 or 4 days once I got it started because it is that good. It's that good of a page turner. I really enjoyed it. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Another little gift that I received at the end of the year is this great bookworm. He is adorable. He's crocheted. He has little glasses on. I hope that you can see that in his little bow tie. One of my students that I had this year, her mother made that for me. And so again, I hope you're watching because I think it's adorable. I probably should also mention my candle. This is one of those things that I like to gift to other people. It's the Bookend scented candle and it's from Hobby Lobby. So, you know, if you watch, they go on sale. They're super affordable. And this is a beautiful scent. I love it in here. I don't burn candles as much as I used to. I used to have a candle going at all times. But I think I've referred to it in my videos previously before, but we had an issue. We are coming up on the 2nd anniversary of our entire house being packed up and cleaned and repainted because we had a soot issue with our fireplace about 3 years ago. So it took a while to get all that in the process, and it was traumatic. So even, I know that my candles probably weren't an issue. We went back and forth about like what caused the soot issue, but even the thought that they might be makes me burn candles a lot less. So if you have any thoughts about that, I'd love to hear it. To have all of my stuff, I had to have to pack everything up. I went through, we probably got rid of like half of our belongings. It was traumatic. It was very traumatic. It was a wonderful thing. That's one of the reasons why I have my library again, because all the rooms got cleaned out. And redone and repainted, and that's when we're like, okay, let's get this started. So we're also coming up on the year anniversary of my library being started and finished. I'll have to look and see when that is, but yeah, we're coming up on the anniversary of that too. How about that? Don't let anybody tell you nothing good came out of this pandemic. One of the other things that I really like about The Woman in the Window is that his characters are not perfect. Yeah, I don't know, like there's so many books that the characters are a little too perfect, or the characters are not quite as relatable because, I don't know, I'm not sure how I really want to say that. Anna struggles with not only what happened to her, but like what led up to that. So when all of that comes out, she's just not perfect. So in addition to having to deal with an accident that is traumatic and terrible, she has to deal with the person that she was that led up to the accident. And I just think all of that part right there is just good writing. It's good writing. The next two books that I read, I do not have a copy of, but they are part of the Agatha Raisin series. I watch Agatha Raisin on Acorn. Yeah, it's on Acorn. I have Acorn and BritBox. They're probably two of my favorite. If I had to cut out, if I had to cut out Netflix or I had to cut out cable, I could do that. But Acorn and BritBox, I love. I love the kind of shows that they have, and Agatha Raisin is one of those. It's definitely a cozy mystery. And when I realized that they were based off of books, I thought, I'll listen to one, see what I think, and I really like them. It is very different than the TV series. So if you've watched the TV series Agatha Raisin and then you're reading the books and you're like, I don't know about that. She is very different in the book series than she is in the TV series, but I like them both, just in very different ways. So I read the first two. I read the Quiche of Death, and then I also read The Potted Gardener. And like I said, I'll talk to you about my book club a little bit later, but we met the author of the book that we read for our book club this month, C.A. Newsome. And when I went to her car and was helping her come over to where we were sitting at the picnic table because we met in a park, she said that her book club had just done this one book, and I said, oh, what did your book club read? And she said it was something about like quiche, and I'm like, oh, the quiche of death, the Agatha Raisin. She had said that she has read all of the Agatha Raisin series, and they've been around for a long time. For some reason, why don't I have that on here? I don't have the copyright date. Let me look. So the Agatha Raisin books, looks like the Quiche of Death, which is the first one, was written in 1992. So they have been out for a long time. I don't know how I've missed that. But I read the first two books, the Quiche of Death and the Potted Gardener, which are both episodes on the Acorn series. So you can watch them too. So the basic premise stays the same, but Agatha is a different character in print than she is on the screen. But that's okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. I like this cozy series. I will continue it and read all of them. I think there are like 32 in the series though, so by read, I will be listening to them. But they're cozies, so it's super easy. I listen to a lot of my cozies when I'm cleaning the house or doing work in the house or working out in the garden or working with my plants. Like those are all things that it's easy for me to listen to a cozy mystery while I'm doing that, and I really enjoy that. I do think that the audio is particularly good on the Agatha Raisin series. There's a great narrator. Her name is Penelope Keith, I believe. And I like her narration. On audio, it's like the kiss of death. Like the Quiche of Death, it is the kiss of death to have a narrator that doesn't do a great job. For some reason, you either like them or you don't. I feel like that's it for me. And if you can get me a good narrator, then I'm in. So Agatha Raisin is about 50, I think she's 53, 54 years old when she decides to retire from her job in the big city. And she does like PR, that sort of thing. And she decides that she's going to do what she's always wanted to do. So she sells her company. She moves out to the country in England, the Cotswolds in England. I don't know if I'm saying any of those words right. Carsley is where she moves to, and she's going to live that country life. She's going to the Potted Gardener. She's going to make a garden. She's going to have flowers. She's going to get to know the local townspeople. They're going to love her, and she's going to lead this idyllic retirement, which doesn't really go as planned because she's a little different, this Agatha. In both the books and in the TV series, she's a little different, so they're not quite sure how to take her, but she does grow on them in both of the formats, so that's good. And she's very entertaining. But what happens is, even though she's done PR in the city, when she comes to the Cotswolds, ta-da, people die around her. So there's another Agatha. Never, ever name your child Agatha. But it seems to be that people die around her, so she picks up the job, she appoints herself a amateur detective and starts working on trying to solve these crimes. And that's what happens in each of the series. In the quiche of death, she has just moved into town when she makes a quiche for a local competition and someone dies. So she is under suspicion, so she's kind of forced into trying to figure out what happened so that it gets the blame off of her. But in The Potted Gardener, the third one, The Potted Gardener is the third one. I did 1 and 3 because I just took whatever was available on Libby at my public library on the app, and so those 2 were available. I actually did number 3, which is The Potted Gardener, first because it was available. Then I went back and did the quiche of death. So I will continue doing those, but right now I need to get out of the cozy corner and start doing some other kinds of books because I've done too many cozies lately. Is that a thing? I feel like it is kind of a thing. The Agatha Raisin series has just what I'm looking for in a cozy. It's a cool little country town, interesting characters, interesting friendships and relationships, a little bit of romance, and it just has a great backstory. It also somewhere said it was a BBC radio production, radio drama, so I'm gonna have to look that one up. So the Agatha Raisin series is definitely an audio cozy series that I will continue. I'll also share an article below that was in Publisher Weekly. It was Unstoppable Women Detectives, and Agatha Raisin is one of those detectives that they talk about. So that was an interesting article. 10 Unstoppable Women Detectives. Some I've heard of, some I've not, but Agatha Raisin is in there. Also Vera Stanhope, which I think I've reviewed one of her books on my videos. I know I did an audio because I watched the whole Vera series on either Acorn or BritBox, and I loved it. So I thought, these also are coming from books, so I'm going to listen to those, and I really, really liked it. I need to continue that series. So just an interesting article, and I will link that. The next book that I read was handed to me by a student, so I'm just borrowing it. I will give it back to her when we get back into school, but it's by Jenny Trout, and it's Such Sweet Sorrow. We have great book conversations in the classroom, and this is one that the student came up and she said, you know, there's a book that I really like, and no one that I give it to likes it. So I thought you might want to read it and see what you think. So I'm like, okay, you know, I'll read anything. If you hand me a book, I don't care what it is, I don't care what the genre is, I will read it. So I started reading this one, and I totally understand why. The student that loaned it to me, she is one of my honor students. She's one of my 8th graders that are in 9th grade English. And she is that girl that whenever I'm talking, she always seems to know, like, she gets a lot of my references, literary references. She reads a ton outside of the classroom. And she has a good handle on literature references, literary references. And I think that's why she really likes this. So this is a modern, no, not modern. This is a different take on Romeo and Juliet. I don't know that I would call it a retelling because Romeo and Juliet, the story that we know, has already taken place before this book, but it works on the premise that after what we know that happened to Romeo and Juliet, Romeo goes looking for Juliet. Now, if you know what happened with Romeo and Juliet, you know where he has to go find Juliet. And the other thing is then it mixes in a lot of other characters. So the traveling companion that is going with him is Hamlet. That's who is going on this quest with him. So it is a very quest-driven book. A lot of references to all the things in Shakespeare, not just Romeo and Juliet. I think I listed some. Berserker, Elysia, Sirens, Odin, Odin's daughter Hildur, Fair, I don't know if I'm saying any of these right, Ravens, there are friars, there are ghosts, Strega, there are witches, Montague, Claudius, Orpheus, Tybalt, Horatio, Ophelia, all of those people, characters, things, beings are in here. So there's a lot of those references, and I think that's why you know, if you're another 8th grader who maybe does not have the wide interest that she does in literature, that's why you would read this and you'd be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But it is a very young adult retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and I really liked it. I think I liked it because it's super unique. If you have an interest in Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet, yet that's very classic. So if you have that nice base there, then you are going to enjoy this extension of that story. And then, like I said, it's very driven by, they have a quest. They are looking for Juliet. Once they find her, again, you know where they have to find her. Once they find her, how do you get her back? How do you fix this? That is a lot of the story. So super entertaining, pretty short. It's put out by Entangled Teen, which is an imprint of Entangled Publishing. So I don't know that publishing house, but it was very good. I enjoyed it. So let me just add before I go on, I know that I had marked a couple of places in this book where I wanted to give you like an idea of what it sounded like. I was just thinking we should go back and set up camp by the fire giant, perhaps find a talking raven to cook over his foot. Romeo chuckled and it looked painful. Hush, Juliet bade him. His hands were folded over his chest. She laid hers on top of them. I shouldn't have said anything. You can't avoid making me happy, he told her, and his heart ached. There was little they could talk about in this place to cheer themselves. Juliet feared speaking about the past in Verona. She didn't want to remind him of their despair at being separated or the drastic measures that he had taken to find her again. Causing him pain would have been the worst thing to her mind. And yet she had to speak because the silence between them was just so much to bear. Oh, Romeo. Here's another little section. If any doubt had remained to her feelings for him, it vanished the moment their lips touched. She'd meant for the kiss to be brief, but it was like coming home. Every memory had a sharper clarity. That life had not happened to a person Juliet remembered being. It had happened to her. Every emotion flooded back and her limbs trembled at the intensity of what she remembered. She felt, too, the space between them, the clawing, the needy separation of time that had passed for him without her. She had felt it in his mouth as he opened beneath hers. He pressed his palm and splayed his fingers to her back. It's a little racy. I gave it a 3 out of 5. You don't have to have a ton of prior knowledge to read that, but you do have to have an interest in that whole Shakespeare world. The next book that I purchased and read is this. It's The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Maxie. Maxie, that's what we're going to go with. I have seen this book everywhere. I know it was on multiple lists last year. It was published. You know how I'm a librarian and I love verso pages. This one's all the way at the back. I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to find it when I started looking for my information, and then I'm like, oh, thank goodness you put one in there, because I feel like that's a rule. You must have a verso page. But this was published in 2019. I've seen it everywhere because it's not just a book. It's not a novel. It is known for the illustrations and its simplistic message. I love this. I'm so glad I finally purchased it. It's one that, like, I think I put on reserve at the library, but this is one that I want in my possession because I want to pick it up and read it over and over again. I would also want to be able to loan this book out because it's such a beautiful story. So my husband and I went to Columbus for our anniversary, our wedding anniversary, and I went to the Book Loft, which I will talk about a little bit later. But the Book Loft in Columbus, they have just an amazing collection of books for sale. I think that's known for having like 32 rooms, and each room is based on the genre or the theme. So just looking around there, I could have spent a paycheck. I did not. I think I purchased 2 books, and this is definitely one of them. So this would also be listed in the book haul portion of my show notes. But it is a beautiful story. I'm so glad I finally got to it. You know, if you were one of those people like me that when I get up in the morning, I make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and I sit down and I do what I've always called a devotion, read some scripture, I journal. I like to look at things that are inspirational to me. It might be a mood board or, you know, something like that. This fits into that category. This will be a good one to just sit down and read and reflect on. It's a beautiful story. It's a meditation on friendship, love, kindness, life, how you want your life to go. You know, I did a lot of goal setting with my classroom. Why is it summer and I'm still talking about my classroom? Because it was that important to me this past year. But we did a lot of goal setting. We did a lot of pick your mantra, pick your word of the year, things that you should focus on. Let's have a plan. Let's have goals. And this is one of those books that feed into that for me. So it's a meditation on life and friendship and love and how you want to approach life. So it's worth reading over and over and over again. And if you've not gotten to it yet, you know, you can get it from the public library and experience it that way, but this is definitely one worth the purchase to have there to return to. The boy in the story just asks some life questions, and his companions, the mole, the fox, and the horse, will respond to them in different ways. Each of them have their own personality and take on life. The mole is obsessed with cake. That is relatable to me. I love cake. But maybe it's just that he knows what's important too. And again, I feel like, you know, whenever I was posting something on Instagram today and I went and saw like my Instagram profile, like where you have all of the things that you've posted, I'm like, mine is basically about books, my dog, coffee, and food. I mean, do you want to just put me in a box and sum me up? I guess that's it. So maybe the mole just knows what he likes. But these new friends that they have encountered each other in life, these new friends are walking through, you know, just some meditations on life together and giving their various thoughts. And they're trying to be helpful. I think that's another thing that really inspires me about the book is that, you know, I really try and stress to my kids that we are a community. So you are a community of this class, you're a community with your friends, you're a community with your family, and each of those you have got to figure out what is healthy and what is not. And you should be the person who's trying to feed into that and make it a better community, wherever you are. The use of color and watercolor in the book is equally as inspirational, so it's not just what's being said, but the way that it is on the page, it is beautiful. It speaks to me. I mean, I could flip through each one of these pages. If you go on to Amazon, I believe it is, sometimes they have like videos linked, and I want to say that that's where I saw a video where somebody literally like flipped through the book. But I still recommend get it in your hot little hands and spend some time with it. And of course, I am a librarian and I love that verso page. I also like the dedication page. I read every page in a book, including the dedication, and this book is dedicated to my lovely, kind mom and my wonderful dog, Dill. So any book that is dedicated to a dog, I'm here for that. So I highly recommend. I don't know that I do a lot of 5 out of 5 on ratings, but this would definitely be a 5 out of 5 for me. So the next book I also do not have, I don't have a large stack of physical books to talk to you about today. Sorry, try and get those back in the picture for you. But I listened to a lot of books and I read a lot of books on my e-reader this time around during this cycle. So one that I listened to is I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer. It's by Michelle McNamara. Gabra Zachman is the narrator. Gillian Flynn does one of the introductions, I believe it is. Patton Oswalt was Michelle McNamara's husband, and after she passed away unexpectedly in the middle of writing this book, he picked up the project and made sure that it went to fruition. He made sure the book was published, that somebody finished it, took all of her notes, finished the book, and that's love right there. So this is definitely a groundbreaking book in the true crime community. I listen to true crime podcasts. I've got a couple to talk to you about today. I would say the podcast that got me started on true crime was My Favorite Murder. Someone at school recommended that I listen to it, and then I listen to it all the time now. I reviewed their book, the My Favorite Murder Girls book, Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered. And I know that they had referred to I'll Be Gone in the Dark numerous times and to Michelle McNamara, that the inspiration that she was when she pursued writing about this particular case, the Golden State Killer. So I definitely wanted to go back and try and read that book or listen to it. So through the recommendation on my true crime podcast, this book keeps coming up. So I decided that I was going to read it, listen to it. I probably should have read it instead of listened to it. This is one of those reviews where I'm going to be really honest with you because I feel like I owe that to you. Do I recommend it? Yes. I recommend it for anyone who's into true crime, but I have a couple disclaimers for you. When I'm listening to My Favorite Murder, it has humor in it, which unless you listen to the podcast, I'm sure you think that's sacrilegious. It is not. They are very respectful to the victims and the victims' families, but they have a different approach to talking about true crime. And I think I must need some of that approach. Now, that being said, I've been starting to listen to some other true crime podcasts, and I'm okay with those too. Like, I'm enjoying those too. But this particular one was difficult. It was difficult to listen to for a couple of reasons. It's extremely thorough. Michelle McNamara puts all of the information out there. There's a lot of it. Listening to it in audio is depressing. It's a different kind of crime. It's a crime that was very random. The victims were women who were home alone. So currently, I am filming this video in my own house. I'm alone. I have my door open because my back porch right now, I hope that it comes through on the video, but it probably doesn't. But I have a bird feeder there, and I have birds that are constantly coming up, and I can hear the birds, and it's beautiful outside, and I feel very safe here. When I was listening to that book, to that audio book, it was just disturbing. It was disturbing that this killer targeted people in their homes, women in their homes specifically, but he also attacked couples. So I spend a lot of time at home alone, and you know, I just think that it was a little bit much for me. It was a little too close to home. Whereas right after that, I listened to Counterclock. I listened to Counterclock season 3, and that was a very specific crime, and then it goes into the details of that crime, and it didn't bother me at all. Like, that was where it was, I don't want to say entertaining, because I think that's where people are like, you know what, you really shouldn't be entertained by crime and murder. No, not entertaining. It was just thought-provoking. The whole thought process. I'm intrigued by the psychological process of someone who can commit a crime, and then, like in Counterclock, if it is that boy, if he killed his family, how does that work? Like, that's what's intriguing to me, thought-provoking, and I want to learn more about it, right? Whereas with the Golden State Killer, no, like, I can't. It's too much for me. Anywho, I still would review it. I don't know, did I put yeah, I did a 4 out of 5. Like, I rated it because it's a fascinating book. It's just a bit much for me to listen to. I probably could have read it and it wouldn't have been as much, but it's also just extremely thorough with all of the many cases. And the fact that this man committed these crimes over so long without being caught, and it just horrific, and that these people lived to have to deal with the trauma of that being part of their story. It's awful. Jillian Flynn says, I believe it was in the introduction, I love reading true crime, but I've always been aware of the fact that as a reader, I am actively choosing to be a consumer of someone else's tragedy. So like any responsible consumer, I try to be careful in the choices that I make. I read only the best, writers who are dogged, insightful, and humane. And that is very true. For this book, her driving force was to locate this killer and bring him to justice. So that is it. It's not the entertainment. It's not that we are trying to consume these other stories for our entertainment. It's trying to get behind how does this happen, track these people down, get them taken away from society so they do not continue to torment society. It's rough. It's true, and it's difficult. It was a difficult listen for me. But McNamara and the editors of the book, they find a great balance between here is the evidence, here's what's happened, you know, we need to be paying attention to this. This needs to be getting more attention because this guy needs to be caught. Now, when McNamara died tragically, in the middle of writing the book, she accidentally overdosed on, and I say that, and it was kind of like an accidental overdose or a reaction. She was taking various medications, and she also had a heart disease, I believe it was, that was undetected prior to that. So there are a number of things that happened in that. But when she died, the Golden State Killer had not been caught. She was still pursuing this killer. Now, after the book has come out, I think the book had just come out, like within a couple of months, they located the Golden State Killer through basically those genealogy, like where you send in your saliva and you find out who you're related to. There was a familial match in that, and that's how they tracked him down, which is insane that that's how they tracked him down. But he has been caught. He is serving time. So that story is also addressed at the end of the audiobook, and then you can obviously go find more information about that. But that also makes the story interesting, that when I started the book, I knew that the Golden State Killer had been caught, so that did help me get through listening of the book. And to know that she had all of this information and was bringing attention to this to make sure that the perpetrator was caught. McNamara was one of the original true crime bloggers back when blogging was a huge thing. Blogging, I think, is still a huge thing, but you have to do something else to lead people back to your blog now. And she was doing true crime back when it was just getting started on the whole blogosphere. So highly recommend the book for true crime fans, but just with that disclaimer that listening to the audio was a bit much for me. I'm still glad I did it, but I'm telling you ahead of time that the audio is just a bit much for me. The next book I also borrowed from a student. It's Hollow City, the second novel of Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children, the graphic novel. So the story's by Ransom Riggs and the art is by Cassandra Jean. I say I borrowed it from a student. That's not true. The student donated it to our classroom library, so I wanted to read it from our classroom library. So that's how that worked. You know, when I went back into the classroom this past year, our school library the system is gone. So it was just real up in the air on like how kids were going to get books. And I talk about books all the time. I recommend a book a day in the classroom. So I was like, okay, we'll start with what I have and then we'll just kind of go from there. I got so many donations this past year that I was able to recommend a book that I had read from our classroom library every school day, which like somewhere around like 180 days, something like that. So I have at least that many books that are in our library, and my kids signed up for it. I mean, like, as I would be talking about books, they'd say, hey, I have a couple books at home if you want them. Of course I want them, bring them in. So, you know, they filled our library. In addition to that, I had several former students who came in and gave me boxes and boxes of books. I've had just people who know how I am in the classroom, or friends, family, who've just given me lots and lots of donations for our classroom library. So when I walk back into it this year, it's just a very different picture than what I walked into at the beginning of last year, where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get these kids to read. I don't know how I'm going to get books in their hands. It worked out. It worked out. So this is a donation from one of my students from last year. They're no longer my current students, but she put this one in the classroom, so I wanted to read it. Now, I have read Ransom Riggs, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. I think I read the first two in the series. Here's my other copy. This is my copy of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. This is the novel. This is the graphic novel of the second book in the series, which I don't have a copy of, but I had already read. I don't know if that's going to work, but I kind of like it, so we'll try. So how does one describe Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series? Again, super unique when it came out. It's still super unique, so I shouldn't even say when it came out, but there was nothing like it when it came out. So in the series, you can see here on the back are some photos. Ransom Riggs took some photos, some just strange photos, like the girl that's on the front where she's like levitating, right? Just some strange photos. And he writes a story basically around these real photos that he has. And the story is about Miss Peregrine, who watches over peculiar children with different gifts or just weird. They just have things going on. So that's the whole premise of the story. And then there is Jacob Portman, I believe his name is. He is a 16-year-old boy who lives in the real world, who stumbles upon with Miss Peregrine and the children that she watches over. When Jacob Portman is dealt a blow in his own family, that's when he realizes that his grandfather had an unusual past. When he investigates this mysterious island and what appears to be an abandoned orphanage, that's when he finds the history of Miss Peregrine and her peculiar children. He makes friends, they go on an adventure together, kind of a quest. Jacob is introduced to a whole new reality full of these peculiar children. So that's Miss Peregrine and her Home for Peculiar Children. In Hollow City, which I don't have the novel to show you, but I do have that graphic novel that I read, Jacob and the children are on a quest to help Miss Peregrine. Something has happened to Miss Peregrine, so they're on this quest to help her. It's better to read the novels and then read the graphic novels or experience the graphic novels. That's how graphic novels often work for me. I enjoy them, but it's not enough without having read the original work. In the second book, you get a lot of the backstory to the first one. And I remember this whenever I was reading the novels. I really enjoyed the first one. It was very entertaining. The second one is a lot darker, but you get deeper into the story. So it's whether you find out in the second one if you're interested enough to continue. I am interested enough to continue, but I haven't done so yet. So it was nice to go back and review with Hollow City, and now I need to read the third one in the series. The third one is called Library of Souls. I believe there are 6 in the series. The 6th one just came out maybe back in the spring, Desolations of Devil's Acre. The whole story takes place in London and in a different reality of London. but I highly recommend the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. So the next book that I read was Alex Erickson's A Bookstore Cafe Mystery Series. I read Death by French Roast. I've talked to you about Alex Erickson before. I was going back and trying to read more of the series. I've read others in the series. I read Death by Coffee, which is the first one in the series, back in 2016. Death by Tea, the second one in the series, I read back in 2018. Death by Pumpkin Spice, I read in the fall of 2018, which is perfect timing. Read it in the fall. I read the fourth, Death by Vanilla Latte, in December of 2018. I read the fifth one, Death by Eggnog, in December of 2019. Again, it's a great holiday cozy mystery, so read that one at Christmas. I recently reviewed the sixth one, Death by Espresso. I read that in April of 2021. So somehow I skipped number 7, so that's on my one to read next. But I did read number 8, which is Death by French Roast. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I don't have a physical copy of it. This is one that I listened to in audio. So I do like the audio series in this. It's not my favorite audio cozy series. I love the storyline. I love that it's in a bookstore cafe. So she sells books. She's also selling coffee. It doesn't get into that a lot, but she does dip in and out of the store. Amazingly enough, she has time to solve all these murders and run a small business. How does that happen? But it's a good little cozy mystery series. It's a little on the edgier side. I met this author at Cincinnati Books by the Banks, which I've talked to you about. The author that we met in the park with our book club just earlier this month, I asked her because she had been involved in Cincinnati Books by the Banks. I asked her for any insider information if we're going to do that in the fall, and she didn't know, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that Cincinnati Books by the Banks comes back this fall. It's a great opportunity to meet authors, talk to them, and purchase their books. That's how I got into this series. I like the backstory of how the main character opens the bookstore because her dad is an author who writes murder mysteries, and that's how she gets into opening up her own bookstore. But then she incorporates her love of coffee with that. It has all those cozy feels, a small town, you get to know all the characters, there's a little love connection. It's just that main character, Chrissy Hancock, she's a bit whiny for my taste. It is very Murder, She Wrote, though. Chrissy, like Jessica Fletcher, comes across some sort of murder scene in every one of them. They're connected to her. She sticks her nose where it doesn't belong. She usually causes some trouble. She's told to stay out of it. She doesn't. Amazingly enough, she's able to solve mysteries that the police cannot. I always love a seasonal cozy mystery. They don't have to be great for me. I enjoy listening to them or reading them on my e-reader or, picking up. They always have that same size, just that same little cozy size. So this is kind of an interesting installment because in this one, Chrissy Hancock, the main character, actually digs her heels into a cold case. So someone has died at the beginning of the book, but just like natural causes. But it brings up an old cold case that is connected to some of the people that we already know from earlier in the series. And so she starts digging into that. Once she starts kicking up the dust on that, of course, her life is in danger and we are introduced to more of the story. But it's an interesting one. I actually probably like this one more than some of the previous ones. It's an entertaining series and worth a listen. Now, Alex Erickson does have another series. It looks like it's called a Forever Pets mystery series. I have not experienced that one. The number one in that series is the Pomeranian Always Barks Twice. The second one is Dial M for Maine Coon. Looks like it's got some cats in there too, so that might be interesting. But my next read by Alex Erickson is Death by Cafe Mocha. And then I'm excited to do number 9, which is Death by Hot Apple Cider. I will obviously read that one whenever we get into like September, October. And then I think that about does it for the Alex Erickson series for me. So then maybe once I finish the whole series there, then I will do a separate video of just Alex Erickson. But I do recommend the series. I've enjoyed it. I'll make sure I have Goodreads reviews out for all of the Alex Erickson's Bookstore Cafe Mystery Series. I think I do. I don't know that I've talked about all of them before. I have talked to you about all of them in this particular video, but I'll probably wait until after I finish that number 9, the Hot Apple Cider one, and then I'll do a nice separate video for those. So the next book that I finished, I don't have a physical copy of it, is C.A. Newsome's Drool Baby. After that, I also did Maximum Security. So the first one in that series is A Shot in the Bark. It's by C.A. Newsome. Like I said, we read this one for our book club this month, and then C.A. Newsome, Carol, met us in the park to talk about it. So that was super awesome. I had read this a long time ago, and we've never really done a cozy mystery with our book club. We do all kinds of books in our book club. We do historical fiction, we do very serious books, we do thrillers, we do modern fiction, popular fiction, we do nonfiction. We've done all kinds of books, but we had not done a cozy mystery. I don't know that there are a lot of cozy mystery fans in my book club, but I really just wanted to get this one out there, and it was just a plus that the author agreed to come and meet us in the park. That was awesome. So I had read A Shot in the Bark back in July of 2018. I think I had met Carol, A Dog Park Mystery, the author of that, probably in like about 2016 maybe at Cincinnati Books by the Banks, and I purchased one of her books, but I purchased one that was in the middle of the series. And I remember when I talked to her, she was like, I was like, well, which one's the first one? I'll start there. And she said, don't start with A Shot in the Bark just yet. I'm having that one redone. So start, with my newest one and then go back. I'm like, okay, I can do that. Well, I had thought I did that, but whenever I met her in the park, she said, that's not one of the newer ones. So she tried to give me the updated version, but I know how it is, and you are selling your books, especially by hand. You don't need to give me the updated version. I really enjoyed the first one. And then I actually, with the book club, because I had loaned my copy out to someone, I reread A Shot in the Dark before we met her in the park, and so I read the updated version on the e-reader. So her books are available through your public library. I read them on my e-reader. If you're an Audible subscriber, which I am not, she did say that they are on Audible as audiobooks, so that would be interesting, but I don't have Audible. So I read A Shot in the Bark back in 2018, July of 2018, and then I reread it before we went to meet with her this time. I also read Drool Baby. I don't have a copy of it, but I reviewed that one for you on Goodreads. That's the second one in the series. So that's the one I want to talk to you a little bit about today. The main character in the Dog Park Mystery series is Leah Anderson. Leah is an artist, and she is in the middle of all of these cases in each of the books. She and her friends all go to the same dog park. The thing that just really took me in on this whole series is that it's local. It happens in Mount Airy. There's a lot that happens in Northside. So I love all of the local mentions. I love it. So that's what I just really drew me into this particular series. But I love the stories too. Obviously, you're going to put a dog on a cover. I'm here for that. I will read any mystery series that has a dog on the cover. But hers are actually focused on those dogs. The dogs play a big part in all of her stories. And I like Leah. Leah's a good main character. She's enjoyable. In the first couple of books, the romance is there. She's being pursued by someone. She's being pursued by murderers too, but she's being pursued by someone who wants to have a romantic relationship with her. So I enjoyed that part of the books too. Drool Baby, the second one in the series, picks up right where A Shot in the Bark leaves off. So this one is a page turner till the very end. And you don't really know that you're being left on a cliffhanger, not too much, until you end up into the second book. So when you finish Shot in the Bark, you definitely need to read Drool Baby. It does pick up, Drool Baby picks up right where this left off. So Leah is trying to deal with what came out at the very end of this book. And then you pick up Drool Baby and all those same characters are there and they're still talking about what happened in the first book, and then it moves on. When something else happens and the first killer is in jail, then everybody's like, wait a minute, how is this happening? How can their close-knit little group of dog walker people, dog park people, be encountering another death in their area? So we get to know the dog park crew as well as the dogs a little more in Drool Baby. So definitely worth a listen or a read. So after A Shot in the Bark and Drool Baby, I went on to read Maximum Security. In Maximum Security, we again pick up with the same set of dog walkers, dog park people. But the death this time is someone that is outside their circle. So they've seen him in the dog park before, but he's not part of their circle. So that makes it a little bit more believable. But one of the dogs actually finds some human bones whenever he runs off. She runs off. I think it's she. She runs off outside of the dog park. And that's how the dog park people are all drawn into this current disappearance, murder, death of someone outside their circle, but still connected to the dog park. And then the whole dog park people pick up on the whole mystery and they're, you know, ready to solve it. So it's a fun one. It moves the story along. The relationship of Leah with that romantic interest from the first story and the second story continues in this third story. So we get to see their relationship grow also, as well as Leah's friendships with all of the people that are in the dog park society, community. Now, I had already read book number 4, Sneak Thief, in September of 2017, and book number 5, Muddy Mouth. I have that one. Actually, it's right here. I had loaned it out too, but I have that one. And I also have this handy dandy little magnet that Carol gave us when we were in the park for fur babies. So I've already read that one. I'll make sure that I have reviews up for those. And then I purchased book number 6 from her, Fur Boys. And got a signature in the park. And then I also bought the latest one, which is Swamp Master, which is a little bit bigger. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm pretty excited about that. So I purchased those two. So those are my next reads. Book number 6, Fur Boys, and book number 7, Swamp Monster. So pretty excited about that. And once again, once I finish some of those, then I will do a separate video and just talk about the C.A. Newsome, the Dog Park Mystery Series. If you are a Cincinnati person and you're a cozy mystery fan and you're a fan of dogs, this is not to be missed. And here's where you can see my little librarian weirdo coming out. I went to her website and printed out the list of books, and then I make all my little notes on when I read what, making sure that I'm not missing something. If your book club is interested in reading this cozy mystery series, contact Carol. She has a website. She's on Facebook. She's pretty active on Facebook too. I'm also part of a C.A. Newsome, the Dog Park Mystery Series fan group, and she can be reached there too. So just connect with her. She was just very willing to come out. We were gonna Zoom, and then she was like, "You're in Cincinnati. You guys are coming downtown." We went to Mount Echo Park. We ate at Camp Washington Chili. We had toured the American Sign Museum, which is right there by Camp Washington Chili. Our book club likes to do some excursions in the summer because, you know, those of us that are teachers actually have the time to do that in the summer. And it was just phenomenal. It was a super day. And she said, "Well, if you're going to be here, I'll just come down there and meet you in person. We don't have to do it in Zoom." Thank goodness, because I am tired of Zoom. So thank you, Carol, for coming and meeting us. And if your book club would like to read her Dog Park Mystery Series, connect with her and she will Zoom with you. She has a deal if your book club needs to purchase books through her. She has a couple of deals there, like you can get, if you're getting 5 or more of the books, they're $10 each, or I think Swamp Monster is a little bit more because it's a little bit bigger, the newest one there, but connect with her. Super great talk. We had a great chat about what mystery or what cozy mysteries are, plot development, character development, self-publishing, just a great chat, So connect with her. So the next book I read, I also don't have a physical one to show you. I'm not sure how I came across it, but it's called Apple Cider Slain. It's by Julianne Lindsey. It's another cozy. I was going to wait and listen to it in the fall, but because I, kept coming in on my Libby and saying, available, and I kept saying deliver later. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to listen to a little bit of it and make sure it's one that I'm going to want to read in the fall. And then I got sucked in. So it's a really good one. I will definitely continue with this series. I think the series is called A Cider Shop Mystery. I'm telling you, I'm going to do a separate video of just Cozy Mystery Series and talk about all of the themes for these Cozy Mystery Series. It seems like just pluck something out of there. A tea shop, an apple cider shop, a sewing shop, a bookstore, a dog park, pull anything out and we will write a cozy mystery around it. I've read so many that are like that, and I think that would be a really fun video to do. So thinking of that, it's on my list of things to do. But this one was fun. There are 3 books in this series. This is the first one, an Apple Cider Slain. The second one is called Pulp Friction. And the third one is the Cider Shop Rules. So I love those plays on words too, like other things. So that's going to be a fun one. But I really like this. It takes place in Blossom Valley, West Virginia, at the Smythe Orchard. It's run by Winona May is the main character. She's a younger girl, like in her 20s, and her grandmother. Her grandfather has recently passed away, so they're trying to run this apple cider, the orchard. She also, well, it's an apple orchard that her grandmother runs, and then she comes in and does the apple cider. And she's interested in opening a cider shop in this first series, in the first book in the series. And while she is trying to get the funds to do that, there's a murder on the property, and of course that sets everything back. So I just really enjoyed it. I think it was really well done. Now, this was a longer one. I don't know how many pages it is if you see it in physical, but it was about 10 hours of listening. But again, like right now, I am trying to deep clean my house, get things back in order, sort through paperwork, shredding things. Like I've got a ton to do. So I'm always listening either to a podcast or an audiobook when that happens, because I am usually here by myself whenever I'm doing those sorts of things. I don't listen to audios or podcasts like when my family is here, but when I'm by myself, I often will listen to those either with an earbud or like old lady style with my phone in my back pocket. So the 10 hours went by pretty quickly. I also had traveled some during that time while I was trying to listen to it, so pretty easy to like put an earbud in if somebody's listening to the game or whatever. So super easy. So this one, even though it's apple cider mystery, so I had it on the calendar to do it during the fall. This first one actually takes place during Christmas, so if you are a seasonal reader, put this one on your calendar to listen to during December, because they're actually celebrating Christmas in this book. So highly recommended. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I will definitely continue the series, listening to the series. I think it's a good cozy to listen to. So the next one I actually have not one, but 2 copies of. A friend had loaned me this one. It's Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah. This one is actually the Netflix one, the one that came out whenever they put the Netflix TV series out there. So she loaned me this. I was about halfway through it whenever I picked this up at a thrift shop, so it's under the book haul portion of my show notes too. But Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah, this was the original, the hardback. So it's nice that you can see both of those, how they turn out. But I was about halfway through this one when I picked this one up, so I finished reading this one and I need to get this one back to her. I was supposed to drop it off last week, and I am terrible about going back to town whenever it's summertime. Terrible. But I plan to do that tomorrow. But I've read some other Kristin Hannah's before, so I was interested in this. Hannah's that I have read. In 2016, I read Nightingale. In 2018, our book club, actually our book club did Nightingale too. In 2018, I read The Great Alone. I have 2 other books by her, True Colors and Winter Garden. Here they are. I have True Colors and Winter Garden. So these I picked up thrifted somewhere, I don't know where, but because I had already read Nightingale and The Great Alone, I knew that she was an author that I would like to read. So these are on my to-be-read list. She has a new one. Actually, I think it was last summer when Four Winds came out by her. And it has had a lot of book buzz. Like, I listen to a lot of BookTube and podcasts about books. I read a lot about books. I'm connected to every, Facebook group or email newsletter for all of the publishers. Like, I follow book news. And the Four Winds has a lot there. So Kristin Hannah's Four Winds got a lot of press. So that's also on my to-be-read list, but I don't have a copy of that one. So Firefly Lane. So I've not watched the TV series, again, on my to-do list of things to watch, but I really enjoyed this. This is a good summer read. This is a good take to the beach read. I feel like I could do a whole list of books that I would not recommend to certain friends. So Jennifer, if you're watching, do not read this book. This has all the things that you don't want to read. Whenever she asks me for recommendations, she gives me a list. I'm not going to do, it would be like a spoiler for me to tell you what it has in here that she doesn't like, but I'm telling you, don't read it. But this is a good realistic fiction, girlfriends, coming of age, romance. It's a good summer read. It's a great summer read. It's a tearjerker. There is definitely that, plot twist in the end where you're like, oh, really? But it's worth it. It's totally worth it. I love novels where you watch a person grow. So these two girls in Firefly Lane grew up on Firefly Lane together, pretty much like preteen to teen, right around there, very close friendship. And they have stayed friends together throughout their life. Most of their careers were actually together, intertwined throughout their life. They are all friends with the spouses. So I do really recommend this one for a summer read, a beach read, super easy. I would say, where did I put that? You know, this is kind of hefty. Like, I don't know that I'd want to throw that in my beach bag. But if you picked up like the Netflix copy, I'm sure they have this at like Kroger or Target, like that would be an easy one to throw into your beach bag. So you might want to pick up the paperback for that one because this is a little cumbersome. But I really liked it. I liked the character development. I love stories that last over a number of years or a decade, especially if they show the growth of someone. I like reading modern fiction, the realistic story of a friendship, the growth of a friendship. Like most friendships, there's definitely some rocky times. You have two characters in the story. You have Kate and Tully. Kate is very grounded. Tully has had a very tumultuous childhood. Her mother comes in and out of the story. Her biological mother comes in and out of the story. And Kate's family is very stable and secure, so they take Tully in as part of their own. So there's not only the growth of the two separate girls and the friendship, but just the way the family continues to support both of the girls is really interesting. I also enjoyed the storyline of Tully coming from a young girl who's struggling just to survive to someone who definitely finds success and moves up in her career. And then the fact that she gains a lot of money and notoriety and fame, yet still struggles to try and find happiness. It's an interesting storyline. I think Kristin Hanna definitely has a gift for, with her characters, showing character flaws, helping them work through them. That she doesn't just show all the blessings, but she shows some of the demons that haunt these people or her characters as they're moving up. I like the coming of age aspect, and then I just also like that generational, like you hear the story of Tully and Kate, you hear her parents come into the story, and then you hear the children in the story. So it's just a different kind of coming of age story where it's not just one person, but it's actually a whole community or a whole family there. So I recommend it. It's not my usual cup of tea. I am definitely more of the mystery or the thriller or literary fiction. This is more contemporary fiction, popular fiction. It's more of a beach read for me. So that's it for me with the books that I've finished since the last time we've talked. I am currently reading, let me grab it, Mexican Gothic. I just started it yesterday. I love it. So my cousin actually messaged me, showed me something where someone was like, you know, I'm only a couple of pages into Mexican Gothic. I don't know, should I stick with it? I don't know how you can be asking yourself that question, so maybe not. It might not be your cup of tea. So you want two very different books? Here you have it. I read this, I enjoyed it, I recommend it. It's definitely a good summer beach read. If you like that story of friendship and love and tragedy, this is your story. You want a good cry? This is it. I'm not sure this one's gonna make me cry unless it just scares me to death and I start crying, but I love it already. I'm only, what am I in? 60 pages in, and I'm like, this is my kind of book. It's creepy, it's Gothic. I'm willing to already tell you I'm gonna love it. So since the last video, I've definitely recommended several books on social media. Again, during the school year, I tried to recommend one book that I had already read to my class that I had a copy in the classroom to the kids. So I'm not doing those. I'll show you a picture of the ones. Those are lining the floor here in my library, and I plan to review those and pull that out to a separate video because I think that'll make it a little bit more sense. And I also want to make a video where the kids can watch it next year too. But what I'm doing is recommending some books. I try and do that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was recommending a book a day, kind of going back with Goodreads and updating some of those Goodread reviews, as well as being able to talk to you about some of the books that I've already read on these videos and recommend those, because there's so many really, really good ones I wanted to share with you. So these are some that I've recommended since the last video. So I want to talk to you briefly about those. But just know that I've read those in the past, not necessarily just here in this last little bit. And even though it was a New Year's resolution, I am a little bit behind on my book reviews, so I'm catching up on those. And some of these I probably mentioned on my YouTube videos before, so somewhere they fell on my list of, hey, you mentioned this in number 14 or whatever, but I felt like I either didn't review it enough or I didn't already have a Goodreads review out there, so I wanted to go back and kind of clean that up. All part of the book reader's life, right? So hopefully you are connected with me on social media, because I always do these on Goodreads and then push them over to my Facebook. So hopefully we're friends on Goodreads and that you're also friends with me on Facebook so you can see these recommendations. Some of these I've recently picked up thrifting, or, however I've been picking up books. And so if I picked it up in that and I talked to you about it like as a book haul or something, I wanted to go back and review it. Okay, so I think a lot of these are probably ones that I've picked up in book hauls and talked to you about in some of the previous videos, but then I just mentioned them. I didn't actually go into them, so I want to do that now. So She Said Yes. This is The Unlikely Martyrdom of Casey Bernall from Littleton, Colorado. Her mother is Misty Bernall. She's the one who actually is authoring the book, because Casey, I think that's how you say it, Casey Bernall is one of the victims in the Columbine school shooting. So I read this book back in October of 2005. It was published in 1999, which is actually the same year that the Columbine school shooting took place. So the Columbine school shooting took place on April 20th of 1999, and this book was published that fall. Now, a little disclaimer. When this book came out, it was an exceptionally inspiring story. But the understory of the book and the whole title of the book had already been in question, and Misty Bernall decided to go ahead and put it out there that the seed of the story remains the same. So the title of the book is She Said Yes, and it is based on the premise that when the school shooters were ending their spree at Columbine, they went into the school library and there were a number of kids in there hiding. They were hiding under desks and chairs, and the school shooters walked up to Casey and said, "Do you believe in God?" And then when she said yes, they shot her. Now, it came out later that several of the eyewitnesses said it wasn't her. It was another girl that happened to, another student. It was actually 3 years before Columbine happened that Casey went through the murder-suicide episode that she was struggling with. So I just think that's such an interesting part of her story, that she had come out of that. And that, as a parent, any kind of watching your child suffer is difficult. I can't imagine your child being taken away from you through this horrific act. But this family had already suffered through thinking they were going to lose their child. So it's just an interesting story. I highly recommend it. I have a copy of this in my school library too, so I'm happy that I finally have a copy here at home. But it's just all, extra. The story remains the same. Casey's story remains the same. She was a 17-year-old junior at Columbine when this took place. In her 17 years, she had already undergone struggles that had included mental illness, depression. She had talked about or alluded to at some point shooting someone at the school. So it's just this weird backstory that then she turned her life around. She became a Christian. She was trying to live a Christian life, following Christ when this happened. So she was faced with being confronted by these terrorist students who were going around asking people if they believe in God and shooting them. So the basic premise of the story holds the same, so I don't want to lose sight of that. But I know she has taken a ton of heat for the fact that had already come into question before the book was published, and she did go ahead and publish the book. So I've read a couple of books connected to the Columbine school shooting. A Mother's Reckoning is written by the mother of, is it Dylan? Or Yeah, by Sue Klebold, Dylan Klebold, one of the school shooter's mothers. She wrote A Mother's Reckoning about Columbine. It's phenomenal. You should read it. I know I've already talked a little bit about true crime earlier in this episode, and it's a great true crime story. She talks about raising him, and then when this happened, that it didn't just happen to Columbine students, that this also happened to her family, under realizing that her son had caused this tragedy. It's horrifying, but such a good book. So I have read a couple of other books, I think, too, about Columbine, because it happened in 1999 and I was already in a school and teaching, and it was a year after my son was born. It's just one of those things that you're just like, it's horrific. And it's another one of those, I feel like reading the accounts of the people who are involved in these tragedies is a way of honoring them. And you can talk about the controversy over whether or not this book is true for the title part of it, but I don't think anybody calls into question that Casey Bernall was struggling herself and that her life was snubbed out way too soon, but that she still has quite a story to tell, and that's the kind of story that I think is worth reading. Highly recommend She Said Yes. It's a very good short read too, so good one. Definitely one that I either book talk to the kids. I think I already did book talk it to them, but if not, now I have a copy for the library and for home. That'll be a good one to talk about. Boys in the Boat is the next one that I want to put a review out there for. The Boys in the Boat, 9 Americans and Their Epic Quest for Gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics by Daniel James Brown. We did this with my book club a number of years ago. I have already mentioned it on YouTube, but I did not have a Goodreads review out there for it. It's one that I picked up in one of my recent book hauls. Highly recommend this nonfiction telling. If you're a Summer Olympics person, it is underway. So that's always been kind of cool right now. When we went out to eat last night, it was up there. There was a great interview that I shared on social media here in yesterday, I think, one of the track stars, and a little bit of her story, which was awesome. So I hope that you pick that up and read it. Richardson is her name. Shakira maybe is her first name. But highly recommend Boys in the Boat. I read it back in 2016. Actually, I did already have a Goodreads review out there. I apologize. But I had picked it up on a recent book haul and I had not talked to you about it yet. So it reads very much like some of those other nonfiction books that I really like In the Garden of Beasts and Unbroken. It's the story of a group of Americans who are on the quest to compete in the Berlin Olympics in 1936. And so you just get a lot of that backstory of what does that really look like? What does it take to compete in the Olympics? You're talking 1936 too, so you get a lot of background knowledge, but really enjoyed this one. Talking about rowing and being on a team like they were. It's very insightful. It's a harrowing story. It did take me a while to get through it, even though I was doing it for a book club, because it is very much a literary read. It's in depth. But I also like how it is that side-by-side kind of story, like in the Garden of the Beast, where you're learning about the boys in the boat, them trying to compete for the Olympics, but you're also talking about the Nazis and what was happening in Berlin in 1936. So put those two stories side by side. There's a number of books that I've read that are like that I really, really enjoy. It's easier for me to take in nonfiction. It's easier for me to take in that historical kind of fiction when I have the two stories to go back and forth. So highly recommend Boys in the Boat. Now I've talked to you about a number of the Dan Brown books, so I wanted to talk to you about the Da Vinci Code. I don't think I have a copy of that. I already talked to you about, there it is, Dan Brown's The Inferno, which is number 4 in the series. And then earlier this year, I talked to you about The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown. That's number 3 in the series. The first one is the Da Vinci Code. And even though I don't have a copy of it, I did want to talk to you about it because obviously it's the first one that I read in the series. I read it in 2003, and I'm pretty sure we read it for book club. And when I read it, I remember thinking, this is crazy. Like, is any of this true? And it caused a big hubbub in the religious world, in the Catholic world, and any church, honestly, just really threw a fit. It's a fictional book, but because he made so many claims, and you did stop and think, like, is this true? Is this true? Are people really saying this? Is this a theory that really is out there? like all of those questions that came up were not very popular with the church. So this is definitely in 2003 is when I read it, which is probably when it came out. I don't know why I don't really have that written on here. But he wasn't publishing it as nonfiction. He made a story up in his head. Now, he did bring in some things that were true to build it around, like the art, some of the religious history that's in there is true, but not everything is true. I remember, I believe it was in the Inferno, if I'm not mistaken, there's this whole segment about redheads, and talking about how they're going to, redheads are going to become extinct because it's a non-dominant gene or something. So basically we're going to there's not going to be redheads anymore. And I remember stopping and being like, oh my gosh, is that true? And looking it up, and no, it's not true. But he definitely put stuff like that. Dan Brown put stuff like that in his novels. And so those people who are strict, I don't know what you want to say, like historians or whatever, really have a problem with his books because he weaves too much in there that they don't like. However, some of the theories that he puts in there are theories that people have or are controversies that are there. So you just have to take it with a grain of salt and look up what you want to if you want to know if it's true or not. But this is fiction. Read it as fiction. But I love the Da Vinci Code. I highly recommend it. Dan Brown to me is a real page turner. I mean, let me grab that. The Lost Symbol, I mean, look how big that thing is. That's a massive book. And then the Inferno is about the same. Like, they're big, hefty, thick books. But, when we're getting into talking about summer reading or what to put on your reading list, if you want a page turner, Dan Brown's a page turner. Like, I want to know. Inferno is a race to the end. Da Vinci Code, they are being chased the whole time. That's how these books work. The Lost Symbol is the same way. There's something going on that these people are running for their lives. It makes for great reading. It is a thriller. It is a true thriller. So because I hadn't really talked about the Da Vinci Code, I just wanted to go back and add that one in there. Another one that I need to add in there is Breaking the Da Vinci Code. So this was put out by Nelson Books. It's a division of Thompson Nelson. So that should tell you that it is a book that was published by a religious publishing house. For one reason, they don't like what Dan Brown has to say, so there's a theologian who went through and said, hey, here's what Dan Brown says, here's what I say. Here's what Dan Brown says, here's what I say. So he lines it up like that. So it's a good read. It says, A Critique of the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. But what I just want to keep coming back to is that Dan Brown is writing fiction. Yes, he puts some truth in his books. He puts some untruths in his books. He is writing for entertainment. This guy is not writing for entertainment. This guy is writing for religious, scholarly critique, okay? So take them each as they are. I enjoy them both. I like to read and expand my mind. I like to think for myself. I like for authors to put things out there to make me think, could this happen? I love those kinds of books. So I'm into both of them. So I just want to throw that out there. Dan Brown writes popular fiction. Most of his books are on that premise that what you think you know or what you've been taught is not true or isn't exactly as it seems. Now, when you take and you throw in those religious things like he does in the Da Vinci Code, when you start making assumptions about Jesus and his lineage and whether or not he was married and whether or not he had a kid, like all of that is going to be controversial. So I'm not saying the books aren't controversial. They are. But they're throwing out things for entertainment. I don't think that Dan Brown went out there and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm really going to shake the church up. But maybe he did because he continues to do it in most of his books. But that's why I think that if you want to pick up something like Breaking the Da Vinci Code, to line those things up with here's what the church believes, or what does the church have to say about Mary Magdalene, or relationships that Jesus might have. Like, I think that's a great idea. I enjoyed reading this too. So just to sum that up, Dan Brown is writing fictional novels. You need to keep that in mind. But Breaking the Da Vinci Code by Darrell Block is published by a Christian press. Also something you should keep in mind. They are both good reads. So I think that I've covered all the Dan Brown books now on the YouTube videos that I've read. And I will continue to read any of his books. They're super entertaining, great page turners. I might have said that wrong. Da Vinci Code is actually the second Dan Brown, what's his name? Robert Langdon, in the Robert Langdon series. Angels and Demons is first. I have listened, no wait, I watched that movie. On Goodreads it says that I've read Angels and Demons, so let me check. I find it interesting how churches approach something like this. So when I'm reading this, it brought up things I hadn't thought about before that I then went to look up. So I don't have a problem with reading something that questions things that I've been taught or how I perceive that things have been in history. I don't mind the questioning part. And I always do take, I shouldn't say I always, but often I take that next step to be like, is that right? I don't know that I've ever heard that before. And then I look it up. Maybe that's part of being an educator. Maybe it's part of being a librarian. But I grew up in the church. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. We were taught the Word of God. It wasn't just like we attended church and sang songs. Like we followed the Bible. We were taught the Bible. We went through Bible studies. Even as a young adult, like we were immersed into the Bible. So maybe that, I think that has probably just continued throughout my life. I still sit down with my Bible every day. I study it. I read it. I look up things. So maybe that's why I don't find it as offensive as some people do when there's an author that goes out there and starts talking about religious things, because I feel like I know enough and that I'm curious enough to find out more and be presented with questions that I find that interesting. Like my curiosity gets the better of me there. I don't find it offensive. I don't find it threatening. I wish that there were more biblical literacy. It is one of the things that I found out this last year in my classroom. You know, literature and the Bible go hand in hand. There are a lot of references, biblical references or religious references, not necessarily just the Bible. Like the Golden Rule comes up in most cultures. It's not just, hey, the Bible said this. It's in most religious cultures to treat people as you want to be treated. So one of the things that I was shocked at this last year is when biblical references would come up and I would say something, the majority of my kids had no idea what I was talking about. Even some of my churched kids did not know what I was talking about when I did these biblical references. So probably a little different age than when I was growing up in the 80s, how we were taught the Bible and biblical literacy. Maybe we're not doing such a great job of that anymore. I hope that our culture does a better job of that. So according to this, I did read Angels and Demons sometime after 2004, like on my list of reading list of dates. It's under 2004, but it's under cleanup. So maybe it was earlier than that, but I guess I did read Angels and Demons. I don't know that I enjoyed that as much as I did the Da Vinci Code or Inferno or even Lost Symbol, though, because it doesn't come up in my mind as much. I couldn't really even tell you what Angels and Demons is about. Oh, I know I haven't reviewed it because I don't have a Goodreads out there for it. So I'll review that on Goodreads, go back in and check into it, and then we'll check back in with Dan Brown in the next in the next episode. I know it still looks like it's a crazy mess around here, but I honestly have already cleaned up some of my shelves here, but really just this one. So I have two big segments here, and then there's a corner, and then there's a long side, and then there's a shorter side over here. I have some pictures I took earlier, so I'll put those in for you so you can kind of tell what I'm talking about. So yeah, my library is definitely an organic library in that it changes constantly. I am rearranging, I am moving things around. I don't have a problem with just continuing to add some books in here. Right now I have some of the books that are on the floor from the books that I had recommended in my classroom this year. So I plan to do a video about those and then intermingle those with some of the books that are on the shelf. So I still have quite a bit of cleaning to do, but I'm happy with the fact that I actually use my library. It is not just a showcase that I like to hang out in here. I read, I rearrange. I'm fine with that. So the next books that I put some recommendations out there for: Agatha Christie, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. I think I may have already talked about this one. And then The Murder of Roger Akroyd, which I had not already talked about this one. Or actually maybe I talked about it, but I picked this up in a recent book haul. So my copy of The Mysterious Affair at Styles, it's got a great spine there, but then there's no book cover, so you can tell it's kind of an older edition of the book by Agatha Christie. The Mysterious Affair at Styles is copyrighted 1920. This particular edition is from 1975, looks like. You can tell I picked it up somewhere because someone has their name in there from 1978. I love Agatha Christie. I would like to read all of her books. I have a huge collection of them. I can't quite remember where I picked these up. I think someone gave them to me, but there's a bunch of Agatha Christie paperbacks, little trade paperbacks, and I love these. They're so nostalgic. This one, like at the front, you can see it was 95 cents. This one says $1.25. Like, oh, I love them. Here I have The Underdog and Other Stories. You can see Hercule Poirot, I think that's how you say his name, but he's on this one. The Death in the Air, Murder on the Links, The Boomerang Clue, What Mrs. McGillicuddy Saw. That's a Jane Marple one. So I would love to read these. I don't know how many I have. I have a ton of them. But maybe this is something that like I should read an Agatha Christie every month. I think I'll put that on my list of things to do. I really like them. I love reading Agatha Christie. I've read several of hers. I love The Mysterious Affair at Styles and The Murder of Roger Akroyd. I used to be in a classics book club, and we read The Mysterious Affair at Styles together in that classic book club. That was really fun. I wish that we still did that, but I think people just got way too much on their plate at the time. Maybe at some point I could revisit that. Again, if you're interested in like a book club dealing with these videos, things that I'm reading or things that you want to read or you want me to read, I'm happy to do that. Just talk to me. With The Mysterious Affair at Styles, it's that true Agatha Christie kind of story where you get to know the character, she sets up the scene, and then quite honestly, like her stories, I don't figure out the murderer until the end of it. It is a true mystery. I wouldn't consider Agatha Christie a cozy mystery, but the author that we met in the park, Carol Newsome, she was talking about, like when I asked her, like, what makes it a cozy mystery, do you think? She mentioned Agatha Christie. I don't consider Agatha Christie a cozy mystery writer, and I'm not really sure why that is. I think hers are a little more complicated, and with cozy mysteries, I feel like they're a little lighter. I always feel like with a cozy mystery, they're not very gruesome in the murder, describing a murder or describing a crime scene. Like they don't get very descriptive in that. I feel like with cozy mysteries, there's usually some romance, but it usually happens off the page, like it's alluded to, or you might know that they walked into the house together, but then you don't pick it up until afterward. I think that definitely leads into a cozy mystery. I think a small community goes into it, and when I say that, then I'm like, well, maybe she is. So I'm just not sure about that. Let me know what you think. Is Agatha Christie a cozy mystery writer? I'm not sure. I definitely feel cozy when I'm reading Agatha Christie. I can definitely curl up with one of her books, but I don't know. I think they're a little more thought-provoking, a little more puzzling than a cozy mystery per se. So in addition to the murder, the mysterious affair at Styles, I think I had picked this up maybe in one of my recent book hauls, The Murder of Roger Akroyd, and I had read that previously too. I read it back in 2014, but I hadn't put a Goodreads review out there, so I added that. It's another classic mystery by Agatha Christie, one of the mothers of mystery. This is the fourth Poirot. I really need to look up how you say his name. I know that Acorn and BritBox both have some Agatha Christie shows that I've seen. So why I don't know how to say Poirot, but I still feel like it's not coming out right because I don't say it. I hear it, I listen to it, but I don't say it. But Poirot. This is the fourth Hercule Poirot novel. He's an interesting character. I enjoy him. I think there's probably about 45 of the Hercule Poirot novels. It's got that English village setting that I love so much. It's very quaint, it's very cozy. It's a prime spot for a little murder and mayhem. And because this is number 4, I feel like he's just kind of getting his feet underneath him as solving those murders. The use of his little gray cells that he alludes to. But he is looking into the strange death of a widow when there's another mysterious murder, and that is of Roger Akroyd. So I need to watch it again. I'm pretty sure I have seen this episode on Acorn, but I need to watch that one, and if I do, I will tell you about it. In the last video, if I'm not mistaken, I had just watched Crooked House, or maybe that might be on the list of things for me to talk about here in a minute. But the other thing that I like about some of the Agatha Christie novels is that she puts a list of her characters in there and the way that she describes him. So let's look him up. Hercule Poirot, a methodical mustached little Belgian, the The detective had faith in the gray cells that would eventually lead him to the killer. So let's see, let's read one of the other ones. Caroline Shepard, a loving older sister with a ferret-like curiosity and the staying power of a bloodhound. She hated to lose at anything, even when the game was murder. So I just love that. I think that's an interesting little tidbit that she does, having her cast of characters. It doesn't read like a play, but all of her books, I feel like, are based in the cast of characters. So yes, the setting is important. Yes, the murder is important, but it's her cast of characters that really makes it an Agatha Christie novel. I look forward to reading many more of hers. I talked about Agatha Christie in the first student video that I did, the second adult video that I did, and then in episodes 13, 15, and 18. So I guess I talk about her quite a lot. I mentioned Death on the Nile. It's a movie that was the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express back in episode 11. I've talked to you about 10 Little Indians, 5 Little Pigs, and Death on the Nile. Their Acorn movie series. I think I had the video that I had borrowed from someone. A student loaned it to me back in episodes 14 and 15. And then, yeah, I have already talked to you about Crooked House on Roku. Definitely worth the watch. Oh, it's so, so good. So that takes me to Artemis Fowl. I have talked to you about Ian Colfer's Artemis Fowl a couple of times. But I don't think that I had also talked to you about this one, which is Artemis Fowl, the Arctic Incident. I think a bird just came down and plucked something out of the yard there. Interesting. But I really enjoy this series. It's easy to recommend. It is one that I've recommended in my classroom, but I think that I had picked one up in a recent book haul, and that's why I'm adding it now. I talked to you quite a bit whenever Disney put out the movie Artemis Fowl. It's a great book to movie adaptation. And it kind of is the first book, but I feel like it kind of brings in some of the other two. But you get to know that main character, Artemis Fowl, in the Disney movie that they put out, and I talked to you about that quite a bit back. Looks like maybe episodes 9, 13, and 18, I have mentioned Artemis Fowl and Ian Colfer. So highly recommend. I like the main character. He's a young boy, but he's a genius. And although he is very gifted here on Earth, he goes on a mission to save, I believe it's his dad. That might be in the second one, if I'm not mistaken. And when he goes on that journey, he does have to go to like the underworld, and that is filled with fairies and not the nice kind. And there's a whole nother world that you get to know. It's got some dark humor in it. I think that's another one of the reasons I like it. It's super hard to find books that are funny, especially books that are funny that appeal to that young adult segment. So it's not... like, I love Andrew Smith too, but his humor is definitely very different than this kind of humor. This is a very innocent series. You know, it's not gonna, I don't want it to, when I say innocent, then I feel like it makes it sound like it's too vanilla, and then young adults are like, no thank you. And that's not it at all. They're super entertaining. You've got that fantasy in there. There's some romance that happens in here, but it's just really humorous in a fun kind of way. So in the first book, Artemis Fowl is a 12-year-old mastermind, but he's a criminal mastermind. He's getting himself into some trouble. He's tangled between the real world and the fantasy world, but these are not your mythological like fairies that you are used to. These fairies are armed and dangerous. They are keeping the order in the underground kind of world. He also has a code that runs along the bottom of the book series that you can crack. He's got quite a bit of an online presence. You can go to his website. So there's a lot more than just, hey, read this book, if you know people are into that. Artemis Fowl actually kidnaps one of the main fairies, Holly, what's her name? Holly, Captain Holly Short, and he doesn't understand the world that he is entangled in now. So he sets in motion an adventure that goes through about 8 books, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a great series read. So it is the second book where his father is taken or disappears, and he does receive word that Artemis receives word of what he needs to do in order to make sure his dad gets out of this unscathed. So it's just another adventure, and it's well done. Like, it's as good as the first. I continued to read these books. I really like them. Also by Ian Colfer is Airman. I believe I talked to you about that one already too. If not, I'll go and review that one and pick it up too. I've read the first 2 in this series. I need to continue. I think the third one is called Eternity Code, and then they go on for about 8 of those. In addition to the novels, they have graphic novel adaptations that are also well done. We have some of those in our high school library. But they're definitely young adult fiction. I would say middle school to high school are going to like these. And then, of course, like people like me who read all kinds. But highly recommend these. Highly recommend them to give to your young adults. I feel like when Ian Colfer wrote Airman, like he had already written the whole Artemis Fowl series. And I don't know how much the publishing world has a hold on what an author does, but I think once he started writing the Artemis Fowl series, like he was having fun with it. But I feel like with this novel Airman, he was already in with a publisher, and maybe they allowed him a little more freedom. It's a much more literary novel than these. These are humorous, fun, adventure, thriller kind of reads, whereas Airman, he takes his time. It's a much slower novel. And just more thoughtful. So highly recommend Airman by Ian Colfer also. Sarah's Key was in one of my recent book hauls also. This is by Tatiana de Rosny. This is a great historical fiction read. Highly recommended. If somehow you got by without reading this one with your book club. Are you in a book club? What book club are you in? Tell me about it. But if you got by with your book club not reading this, I would be surprised if you're in a book club. So I read this back in April 2012 with my book club. We like historical fiction. It's an easy recommend for us. This is a Holocaust themed book. So you might be like me. I'm not a big historical fiction fan, especially with Holocaust. I usually struggle reading those. I feel like it's my duty to read those, like listening to these stories, finding out more about what happened. You know, those who don't know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. I don't want to repeat an incident in our history like the Holocaust. It's horrific, but it's very hard for me to read most times. Now, even though I say it's hard for me to read, especially if I'm reading it with a book club, it's one of the benefits of being in a book club. They force me to read things that I wouldn't pick up on my own, and they force me to read more literary things from time to time, which maybe I might struggle with a little bit. Read too many cozies, too many murder mysteries, too many thrillers. Is there such a thing as too many? There aren't. There is not. But I am glad that I read Sarah's Key with my book club back in 2012. So the main character is Sarah, kind of, in addition to Sarah. So this is one of those side-by-side kind of stories. In Paris, in July of 1942, Sarah is a 10-year-old girl. She's taken with her parents by the French police as they go door to door and they're cleaning out the Jewish population. They're taking the families. You don't want to know where they take them to. I think we all know where they take them to. But she is desperate to protect her younger brother, so she locks him into a hiding area there in the house, thinking that they're going to take her and bring her right back. They do not. This is the central part of the story, and it's awful. It's awful. You know what her intentions were, but you know what the reality of the Holocaust was. And those two things will just sit in the pit of your stomach for the entire read. In addition to telling that story, it also goes 60 years later. Sarah's story intertwines with that of Julia Jarmon. She's an American journalist. She's investigating what happened during that roundup. She's aware of it, but she doesn't really know the story, so she's investigating that and trying to tell everyone else. And during her research, she comes upon the story of Sarah. She has a personal link to that story, and it changes her story, the story for Julia. So super good historical novel, highly recommend. You know, I think we're all looking for something different when we're talking about our summer reads or our beach read. This would be a good beach read if you're looking for something that's meatier. You don't meatier. You know, you're not looking for that Firefly Lane where it is a little bit lighter and it's going to make you cry and there's that tragedy in there. Maybe you're looking for that historical fiction read. You can do this in a couple of days. I think somewhere here lately I might have made a post or something that I know it looks like that I spend my entire life reading. I don't. My goal has been to read 100 pages, or, you know, if I'm listening to an audio, to listen to an hour a day. In doing that, what am I on? Like 40 books so far this year. I have a higher goal this year of reading books than I have in the past, just because I know I need to be pushed a little bit more. But I would say I stick about around to that, about an hour of reading a day, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Yes, sometimes I get caught in a book and I have the opportunity to sit for a couple of hours and read, but most of the time my reading is more in chunks. I read some in the morning. I might pick up the book like yesterday when I knew that we were going out last night and my husband was going to go into a store that I didn't want to go in. I took a book with me. I got 50 pages of it read. So my reading is kind of interspersed there. But like with a book like Sarah's Key, you can read it in a couple of days. And it's a super good story. And it's a story that we should know. There's some history in there that we should know. And we don't do a great job, honestly, as adults, of continuing to learn about our history. I don't think we do. Highly recommend Sarah's Key. It's a painful story. Maybe that's why I don't like historical fiction either. I give my friend Stephanie a hard time because she's always giving me books that are, terrible. Like, they're great books, but they're terrible stories and they're sad and it's hard. It's hard to read people's painful stories sometimes. But this is probably the only way that I'm getting a lot of that history in, because I'm not going to read a ton of nonfiction about history. I'm just not going to do it. So historical fiction for someone like me is a great way to be told some of these things that happened that maybe I didn't know about before. Another book that I know I've talked to you about several times, but I didn't have a review out there for, is Rebecca. This is by Daphne du Maurier. It's the classic tale of romantic suspense. It's definitely got a Gothic feel to it. So, currently reading Mexican Gothic, this is a good classic to pair with that. So this is definitely a book that I know I book talked in my classroom. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This is my classroom copy. I had this copy here at home, so that's why I wanted to put that out there. But it does have the Netflix series on there too, and I haven't seen that. It's also on my list of things to watch. I will get on that. I think it's an actual Netflix movie, not a series. But I'll be putting this one in the classroom, and then I have this copy here at home that I've read before. Somehow it just gotten past me that I had not reviewed it on Goodreads. So it's a romantic, psychological thriller, definitely got some Gothic feel to it. This is one of those stories that you could go back and read now. And even though it's been out there a long time, you might know a little bit about the story, but with the Netflix movie coming out, I think there's a renewed interest in it, and I'm telling you, go back and read the classic. It's worth reading. I haven't even seen the movie, and I'm telling you, I'm sure the book is better than the movie. It's interesting to know that du Maurier also wrote The Birds, that was produced by Alfred Hitchcock. So du Maurier definitely understands about psychological thrillers. I've also read Jamaica Inn by du Maurier, and that's another one that's a psychological thriller, but I just feel like it's not quite the page-turner that Rebecca is. Rebecca won the National Book Award for Fiction in 1938, so if you also follow book awards, the National Book Award is definitely a list to look up and start checking off your list. One of the most interesting things about Rebecca is that the narrator is unnamed. We don't know her name. The title of the book is Rebecca, but Rebecca is the first wife of Mr. De Winter, and you know the narrator is now known as Mrs. De Winter because she has married Mr. De Winter after something happened to his first wife, Rebecca. But that's the only way that you know the author's name, is that she is the second Mrs. De Winter, and that says a lot about this book. The narrator meets Mr. De Winter at like a resort when she is under the employ of another lady. She's like not a maid, but like not a caretaker, like a companion to this other woman. And then she meets Mr. De Winter. They fall in love. She marries him and is taken back to his home. That's when she finds out that there is way more to that first marriage story. It's good, it's creepy, it's Gothic, it's a great story. I talked about Rebecca back in episode 15. I have some other books by du Maurier also, so those are going to be on my list of my reading list. So The Flight of the Falcon, and this one's kind of falling apart here. It's this one. This is Marianne. It's actually just the cover that's falling apart. The book is just fine, but it's an older cover dust jacket, and I can't let that go because look at it. It's beautiful. And look at Daphne du Maurier, her picture on the back. Isn't that beautiful? Did you just hear the birds? How beautiful. Okay, just in case you didn't hear it the first time. Look at the inscription, whoever gave this as a gift. Can you see that? To our friend Doris. Georgia, George, and Buddy. I love that. That's the beauty of picking up some of these books from thrift or Goodwill or secondhand shops. I just love reading the inscriptions, or that it has the original book jacket. I love those things. I feel like there's a couple more here. Yeah. So I have this one. It's called The Scapegoat, and My Cousin Rachel, which looks like this was a set. So I have a couple more du Mauriers that I need to put on my reading list there. So have you read any of those? If so, which one should I start with? So I know I've talked to you about John Green. I've recommended to you The Fault in Our Stars. It's in my student video number 5. I've also talked to you about Looking for Alaska in episode number 9 because it's supposed to be a television series. I haven't heard any updates on that. I tried to look again. It's in the works. That's all everything ever says. But I picked up in one of my recent book hauls, Will Grayson. So I talked to you about that in episode 18, but I didn't actually review it. And I love all things John Green. I love the books that he writes. I love that he has the, what's it called? The Vlog Brothers, something like that. He and his brother, because they were in different parts of the United States, will do videos together, but separately. So like where they talk to each other, kind of goes back to the vlog. I think it's called the Vlog Brothers. Anywho, I like watching those. John Green also does some condensed history videos. So I like his social media presence. I like that he does the videos. I like that he writes the books. I just think he's an exceptionally curious, interesting being that I like following. And on Will Grayson, he wrote this with David Levithan. I always struggle saying his name too. I've read several David Levithan. I've read several John Green. And this is one of my funniest ones. I was just reading the bottom. It says, funny, rude, and original. I'd say that's about right. It's just a good mix of John Green and David Levithan. So what do I want to tell you? So I read this book back in September of 2012. I read Looking for Alaska in 2006, Paper Towns in 2015, Let It Snow, which has John Green, a story of John Green's in it, in 2009, The Fault in Our Stars, John Green classic, 2012. David Levithan, his Realm of Possibility in 2006, which I really love that book. And then he also did The Lover's Dictionary, which is fun. That's a is it nonfiction? I say Lover's Dictionary in nonfiction, but it's not. I don't think it is, but that's a super good one. I need to talk to you about that one. Let's stick with Will Grayson for now. So it takes place in Chicago, and it's just so fun. Will Grayson meet Will Grayson. One cold night in the most unlikely corner of Chicago, two strangers cross paths. Two teens with the same name, running in two very different circles, suddenly find their lives going in new and unexpected directions, culminating in a heroic turns of the heart and the most epic musical ever to grace the high school stage. And that's how we meet Tiny Cooper. So there's another book that came out. It's Tiny Cooper's actual story that is alluded to in here. Tiny Cooper is a very colorful character who is friends with one of the Will Graysons, and the other Will Grayson meets. And he is a football player. He's a very burly guy, but he's also a gay teenager living in this body of Tiny Cooper, who's not so tiny. And so you get that other story that was produced after, or the story that was published after this, that's Tiny Cooper's story. And I have not read that one yet, but I highly recommend Will Grayson by John Green, as well as any John Green and any David, I'm going to say Levithan, book that is out there, because they do an exceptional job with young adult literature. In addition to John Green, I've talked to you about John Grisham several times too. So this time I want to add a review for Bleachers. Put this on your list to read in the fall. When Friday Night Lights kick back up, this is a great one to read. It's short. It's one of my favorite John Grishams. I've talked to you about a lot of John Grishams, but this is definitely one of my favorites, and it's not his usual courtroom drama, which I love, and I will read all of his. He is one of those that the backlist, I need to go back and read everything he's written because I love it. They're page turners, super fun if you're headed to the beach or to the pool. They're great. You can just get, fall into those novels. This one's a little more thoughtful. So this is called Bleachers by John Grisham. The main character, Neely Crenshaw, is coming back to town. The high school football coach is at the end of his life. They know he's at the end of his life, so his players have now started to come back to town, waiting for the inevitable. They go and spend the evening like in the bleachers, the football bleachers. They're reliving old times. I don't know if you've been around men who played high school in football, but they can tell you that they played Maxie the third game of the year, and that during the third quarter at the 8-minute mark that so-and-so threw the ball and so-and-so intercepted it and ran it for so many yards. Like, if you're around football people, you know what I'm talking about. My husband played football in high school in the 80s and can still tell you sports information, the details from those games. He can tell you the score. He can tell you who played. It's craziness. But this is a story of Neely. Those guys have come back. They're sitting in the bleachers. They're rehashing old times. But it becomes very apparent that something happened. Something happened to Neely when he was in high school and he was the star quarterback during halftime of a playoff game. And what has happened during that time, no one talks about. They know it happened, but nobody talks about it. But he has come back to pay his respects to that coach. But you can tell that there is a relationship. There's something not quite right about that relationship. So it's the story of that. It's the story of this guy who was this football star and how he is dealing with that later on in his life. Some of the people and the way that he treated people when he was in high school come back to light. And it's a reckoning. It's just a reckoning with trying to make peace with that coach, trying to make peace with what happened in that locker room. So I don't want to be like, ooh, like not, but I also just don't want to give it away. And it's just so well done. The way the story unfolds, the ending of the story is so good. This is one of the books that we did on First Chapter Fridays, one Friday, and it was a good, like I just started reading from page 1, and I mean instantly I was back into the book and I wanted to finish it again. So highly recommend Bleachers by John Grisham. It's one of my favorites by him, even though it's not normal John Grisham writing. You need to read it. Put it on your list for Friday Night Lights this fall. Like most high school coaches, the coach, Eddie Rake, is legendary. Some people love him, some people hate him. Most of the people know that he led the school into the football playoffs, and therefore you have a place in history that just cannot be rivaled. No matter what you do, you did what you had to do to make them win. And so that's what's being dealt with here in his last days. The whole novel ends with a funeral speech that tells you everything you need to know. But again, it's not like you're reading the whole book waiting for that revelation. There's a lot of other stuff that's happening in the book. It's very thoughtful, very thought-provoking. I love it. I've talked to you about John Grisham's Brethren, Client, The Firm, King of Torts, Painted House, Partner, Rainmaker, The Summons, Innocent Man, and Bleachers. Student Video 2, Adult Video 2, Student Video 6, videos 8, 13, 15, 18. I've mentioned John Grisham a lot because I've read a lot of his books. I need to read more. I really, really like him and recommend him. So another book that I picked up on a recent book haul, but I did not have a review out there for, is Life of Pi. This is by, I'm going to say, Jan Martel. It was the winner of the Man Booker Prize. I have the paperback copy that I picked up at Thrift. This is so, so good. If somehow you have gotten to this point in your life and you've not read Life of Pi or watched the movie, which is fabulously done, you need to stop and put that on your list like right now. It's philosophical. It is fiction. We've talked about that already. It is fiction. But the main character is struggling with his story, with what he believes, what his family believes, how he wants his life to go. And in the midst of doing all that, he's on a ship with his family. They are taking their zoo to, I think, Canada. And there's a shipwreck, and he ends up on a lifeboat with a tiger, a hyena, a zebra, and an orangutan. Or is he? And that is the whole story. You know, what is truth? What is fiction? What is his reality? What is his mind doing to help him survive? It's so, so good. And that's all I can tell you without giving too much away. It's a fabulous fantasy literary novel. It would be a great summer read. So at the beginning, you meet Pi and his family. He tells you like about his name and his family and his origins. and then there's the shipwreck, and then there's after the shipwreck, and then there is him when he makes it back into society and what happens with that. And it's just, you know, kind of that unreliable narrator again. He's undergone trauma. What happened and what didn't, we're not quite sure. And that's so much the beauty of the book. There's some magical realism in there. It weaves into Pye's fantastic story. It also hints of some of those classics like Robinson Crusoe or Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. So it does hint at some of those classics, and I believe that it is a great modern classic that I hope you've already read, but if you haven't, read it now. So I picked up a copy of this, The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner. I've talked to you a little bit about Twilight, mainly because Midnight Sun came out, and I actually have it on hold at the library, and I just got the notification this morning that it's in. Let me rephrase that. When I knew that Midnight Sun was coming out, I put it on hold at the library. I had to wait forever, like months. But then once it came in, I wasn't quite ready to read it. It always seems to come when I'm already in the middle of something else. But I am going to go ahead and take that delivery from the library now. Like, it's an e-copy. It's an e-book. So I am going to go ahead and take it this time, and I haven't taken it yet. But I know I've talked to you a little bit about it. I think now it's just like, for me, when I'm deciding what to read when, it's a lot about mood, and I don't know that I'm quite in the mood for it, but I need to get to it. So I'm going to read Midnight Sun between now and hopefully the next time that I do a video. But I did pick up this copy of The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner. This is an eclipse novella. That's how it describes it. So I talked to you about Twilight in episode 8, and I picked this one up in one of my recent book hauls. This is just a novella, so this is going to mean nothing to you unless you've read the Twilight books. I've read all of the Twilight books. That's why I have to read Midnight Sun. Midnight Sun is Edward's point of view of Twilight, so I feel like it'll be a pretty fast read. I'm hoping that I enjoy it as much as the Twilight series, but this is a only one that you're going to read if you've read the Twilight series. But notice how small it is. It's just giving you some backstory on Bree Tanner, who is one of the new, what do they call them? Like the newborns of the vampires during one of the fight scenes, I think it is. Meyer wrote Bree Tanner like to help her figure it out as she was writing Eclipse. So if you are a Twilight fan, this is a welcome addition. It is worth picking up and reading if you're a Twilight fan. So another book I recently put a review out there for is one by Lauren Oliver, and that is Delirium. I do not have a copy of Delirium. I have a copy of Panic, which is on my to-be-read list like right now because it is a new Netflix series that I've heard really good things about. I have read Vanishing Girls, which I love, and I've read Before I Fall, which also was turned into a Netflix movie, which I've not watched. I guess I need to be watching some television here, folks. But I put the review out there for Delirium because it's one that I did not have a review out there for. I read it back in 2012. Lauren Oliver is one of those authors that writes different kinds of books, and sometimes when you're reading, you forget that she wrote a different one. Because these two books are very, very different, and Delirium are really different from either of these. So Before I Fall is a book about a young teenage girl. Very quickly, she is in an accident and is killed. No spoilers here, it's the whole premise of the book. But what if, after you are dead, you are forced to come back and relive that day until you've learned your lesson? That's the premise of this book. So when you start the book, I don't like any of the characters. I've told you I struggle with reading books where I don't like any of the characters. But once she comes back and has to continue living over that day and she starts seeing some of the things that she's been blind to before, she really grows on you. So great character development in this one. But I do need to watch the movie because I do want to know how they deal with the ending in that movie. It often really frustrates the reader. It is what it is. But I love a good ending, and it has a good ending. It's just not one that Hollywood people like. So I'd like to know how Hollywood ended up turning that into a movie. So love Before I Fall. I also loved Vanishing Girls, but this is very different than Before I Fall. Unreliable narrator again. The main character, there are two sisters, Dara and Nick. They used to be inseparable. Something has happened. You know something has happened, and you're dealing with what has happened there. But when this happens, there's a girl that has gone missing. So one of the sisters goes looking for her, and it's not good. Like there's a whole story going on with that too. So it's very edgy. It's very page turner. What the heck is going on? If you're someone, and I know I have a lot of students who start reading and they're like, I don't even understand what's happening. If you can't just be patient and let the story unfold, this might not be one for you. I'll be honest with you. So I know that I have people that struggle trying to read this book. I love it. I love that it unfolds slowly, that I am not being told what is happening, that I have to read it out for myself, and that when I do realize what's happening, that I go back and have to look up places where I'm like, wait a minute, that can't be true because, ooh, I wasn't paying attention. I really like those kinds of books. So this is really good. Vanishing Girls, super good. But the review that I put out there was for Delirium, and it's more of a dystopian novel. So in Delirium, love is a disease, and you get inoculated against it when you're, 17 or 18, 19 years old. So the main character is just waiting for that. This is just part of her society. It's what people do. But she meets someone prior to getting that inoculation, a segment of society who are not buying into the fact that love is a disease, so they're not taking the inoculation. So they have to live in this other area. I can't remember what they're called, but they don't buy into it. So I think Delirium is one of those great novels where you realize no matter how perfect that society thinks that it can make it, that there are always going to be that segment of society that doesn't buy into it, that knows that life is messy, that love is messy, and as much as it causes people heartache, it also makes life worth living. It's a super good YA novel, dystopian if you like that. Highly recommend it. And it unfolds. Is she going to, what's the main character's name? Lena. Is Lena going to get the inoculation, or is she going to follow this segment of society that does not think that love is evil? So I love it, highly recommend it, and I just put the review out there for that. Now, that being said, Panic. Panic is on Netflix, so again, I'll watch it and let you know in that one. But this one, it's set up like a game. Young people have a game. Right after graduation, one of the girls needs to play the game in order to get the money to go to college, if I'm not mistaken. It's something like that. But the game is not fair. The game is not without very, very high stakes. So, sounds interesting. I have the book. I want to read the book. I want to watch the Netflix show. Another book that I recently picked up in the haul and didn't have a review out there for is Bel Canto. Bel Canto is by Ann Patchett. She's the winner of the PEN/Faulkner Award. This is one of those books that really sticks with you. We did this with our book club, if I'm not mistaken, but I didn't have a Goodreads review out there, so I just updated that. I read this back in 2014, pretty sure with my book club. Here recently, I think it was just in the last episode, I talked to you about Ann Patchett. I'm pretty sure I shared an article that she had written in maybe the New York Times, if I'm not mistaken, about having three dads, like her biological dad, a dad that her mother was married to, like for a second marriage, and then the dad that her mother was married to for a third marriage, and how each of these men played a role in her life and her writing life. And she mentions in that article that her dad, who did not want her to become a writer because he felt like she wouldn't be able to make a living at that, I can't remember which dad it was, but whichever one it was, finally changed his mind when she wrote a little novel called Bel Canto and was able to make a living off of it. That was one of the interesting parts in that article. But this book is a fabulous read. It's romantic, it's tragic, it's historic. It's based on a true event that happened, I believe, in Peru. Differently, obviously it did happen differently, but it's based kind of on the premise of how that might happen. So there is a singer. She's a well-known singer. She is singing at a special event In the book, I think it takes place also somewhere in Mexico, but it's taking place at like a diplomat's house, somebody who's part of the politicians of the time. And after the performance, the whole house with all of the guests is taken hostage by these terrorists. And it's the story that unfolds when it doesn't just happen for a couple of hours or overnight. It lasts for days. And it happened here, it says in the back, somewhere in South America at the home of the country's vice president, a lavish birthday party is being held in honor of the powerful businessman, Mr. Hosokawa. Roxanne Koss, opera's most revered soprano, has mesmerized the international guests with her singing, and it's the perfect evening until a band of gun-wielding terrorists take the entire party hostage. But what begins as a panicked, life-threatening scenario slowly evolves into something quite different because they're there for a long time. So there's moments of beauty, moments of friendship, moments of love that happen between all of the people that are in the house, not just the guests, but you know, the terrorists, and it's crazy. It's crazy, and it's such a crazy good book. So you do get some background knowledge about the opera and singing, which I like that she puts that in there, but it is really about the relationships that are formed when these people are placed in this particular predicament. There's definitely a psychological thing that's going on there between all of the people that are forced into this very tight group that are being terrorized, and yet the terror wears off because they have to continue living. So such a good book. Another really good one. I know it doesn't look like a summer read or a beach read, but definitely you could throw this in your bag and you could really enjoy this during some downtime this summer. I picked up a copy of Alana, the First Adventure in a recent book haul, so I went back and added that review. This is Song of the Lioness. That's the name of the series. This is the first book in the series. It's by Tamara Pierce. It's a quartet, and it's just, you can tell, like, she's young. This is a good middle grades to high school read, I would say. I think middle grades will probably be the most interested in it, but you know me, like, I read anything. I read to recommend. This is a good one that talks about a girl who does not want to be limited by her gender. Her gender normally has very few things that they're allowed to do in her society, and that's not what she wants to do. So she masquerades as a male. She has a twin brother, so they kind of swap places, and he goes and does what she's expected to do, and she goes and does what he's expected to do. Did I say that correctly? I think so. But basically they swap places. It's super good. Very fun fantasy read by Tamara Pierce. And I would continue the series. I have not yet, but I would definitely continue the series. I like that there's a map of their fictional world in there. So highly recommend Alana. Another book that I had not put a review out there for is Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. This says the enchanting prelude to the Lord of the Rings. Now, I'm not a huge J.R.R. Tolkien fan. I read The Hobbit. I enjoyed it, but I think it might be a timing thing too. So I do need to return to that. I think he's a marvelous writer that I should read more of. But I'm always a little confused, like what comes first, what comes second, because The Hobbit is the prelude to the Lord of the Rings. I've never actually read Lord of the Rings yet, so only read The Hobbit. So I do need to continue. It's an easy book to recommend to high schoolers for sure. Tolkien knows what he's doing, obviously. The movies are well done. I'm just not as big of a follower of J.R.R. Tolkien as I am of, say, that Harry Potter series or some of the other series that are out there. I don't know why though, because I really do like it. It might be one that I could maybe listen to the audio and kind of dip back into that world. It would be a great read aloud to younger readers too. So if you're looking for something to read in the evenings to your family, this would be a good one to do. I like the way that the narrator tells the story. This is another one that includes maps of the world. Yep, there it is. So there's a fantasy world where he has created a whole different world for you to experience. And with the wizards and the hobbits, the dragons, it's a classic that is best experienced in print or read aloud before watching those well done adaptations. So highly recommend, and I know I want to continue the series too. The last one that I've recently reviewed, I don't know why I didn't have it out there because I just read it last year, A Gentleman in Moscow. I wanted to throw this one out there to you. I've already mentioned it in one of my previous videos, and it was on my 2020 shelf in the last episode when I gave you a tour of my 2020 read shelf. It was on there, but then when I looked back, I'm like, I don't know that I actually talked to you about this one, so I wanted to do that. I had the Goodreads recommendation out there in February of 2020, but I haven't actually recommended it to you, and I definitely want to do that. So our book club discussed this in February of 2020. It was our read. It was one of our livelier discussions. You can go and see, you can take a tour of the hotel that's mentioned in the story. You definitely get some historical fiction in there. With the history and the characters and the plot twist, it's just an excellent read. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're turning it into a movie, so you definitely want to read this before watching the movie. I would definitely call this a literary novel. It's put out by Penguin Random House. Highly recommended by so many people. So I just want to add to the stack of people who are saying A Gentleman in Moscow is a fabulous read. It takes place in 1922. There's a 32-year-old Count Alexander Rostov. He is an aristocrat. There's something going on with him. He is in a hotel in the Kremlin, and there's a whole story about why he's there and why he has to stay there. But while staying there, he encounters a number of people, and one of them is a young girl. It is the story of their friendship. As he gets to know her and her family, he becomes part of her story, part of her family. And around that 1922 and beyond there for the next decade, how their lives come back together, and the roles that they play in each other's lives. It's super, super good. Such a good story. Highly recommend A Gentleman in Moscow. Okay, so I have talked to you about the books that I've read since the last video that I would recommend. I've talked to you about some of the reviews that I've put out there since the last video. Some books that I've already talked to you about in other videos, but maybe I didn't have the Goodreads review, or books that have been part of my book haul, but I haven't really talked to you about them, so I wanted to get those done. So let me set these down, and then we'll talk about my recent book haul, which again, I've picked up, I'm not going to say too many, but I've picked up a number of books to add to the collection, but I'm also picking up books that are adding to my classroom library, so I want to talk to you a little bit about those too. I will not be reviewing all of these in this particular video. I will put out some Goodreads reviews for those in the days to come. So let's talk book haul. The first two are these two. I already talked to you about The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackey. The other one that I picked up at the Book Loft in Columbus is They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us. It's a book of essays by Hanif Abdurraqib. That's what we're going to say. Who is a local Columbus author, poet, essayist, cultural critic. His first full-length poetry collection was The Crown Ain't Worth Much. It was released in June of 2016. This book came out in 2017, and it's by $2 Radio, Books Too Loud to Ignore. So looks like it's a small press book, so I thought that might be interesting. So these are the two that I picked up in Columbus. I've already read this one. This is on my list of books to read. So I mentioned the fact that my father-in-law had an accident. My husband and my father-in-law were on a fishing trip up in Michigan at Lake Sinclair, and my father-in-law had an accident, and he was in the hospital there for a week with a traumatic brain injury, head injury, and so I ended up taking my mother-in-law up there and staying with my husband for the next 4 days while we were trying to get my father-in-law transferred back down here. And during those days, it was just ridiculously crazy days, because Michigan was still in a red zone, so we couldn't go into the hospital. We couldn't see his dad. Everything was done over the phone, talking to nurses and trauma specialists, and sometimes they would call and sometimes they weren't calling, and you were just like this waiting game. So every once in a while we would just be like, let's just get out of the hotel room and go find something to do. So it was the first time that I had ever been in an Ollie's. It was right across from the hotel. I know I had a student this past year who said she went into Ollie's all the time and picked up books. What's the one that I just recently read? The rhythm section she had picked up at Ollie's. So I went into Ollie's, and yes, I found a couple of really good things. So I went there, I went to a local Goodwill, I went to a local Salvation Army. So I'm not really sure exactly where all these books in the book haul came from. So if I see it on there, I'll mention it to you. But otherwise, just know I either picked it up at somewhere like Ollie's or a thrift place, probably like Goodwill or Salvation Army. They had a really good Salvation Army there too. So every once in a while we'd just get out and stretch our legs, and sometimes I would go into one of these stores and just walk around for a little while, just trying to stay moving during this incredibly horrific time. And you know, just as a little update, is my father-in-law better? He's getting better. Anyone who's had anyone who's suffered a traumatic head injury or brain injury, I feel for you. I had no idea what this looked like. I think we still say that every day because every day is different. The trauma specialist said, wax and wane, it's wax and wane. You'll have good times, you'll have bad times. And that's definitely true. And we, as of yesterday, are 5 weeks out. So he is home, he is recovering, but it's really difficult. So if you're a praying person, just put him on your prayer list. He is John Lovin Sr. My husband is John Lovin Jr. So one of the books that I picked up is a copy of Let's Roll by Lisa Beamer. I picked up a copy for my classroom library. So remember, I'm not going to review all these books. I'm going to try really hard not to, because I know I already have way too long on this video. But I picked up a copy for my classroom. I've already read that. It'll be an easy one to recommend. I picked up a copy of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I picked up 2 copies, one for me and one for my classroom. These did come from Ollie's. They were $2.99. This is by Jason Reynolds. It's a poem, a nod, a nothing to lose. I think I read it last summer, so it'll be an easy one to recommend to my students. And I'm glad to have a copy of it for my library too. A copy of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. I've already read this one too. It's by Rebecca Skloot. I'm going to read you the front cover. And I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Doctors took her cells without asking. Those cells never died. They launched a medical revolution in a multi-million-dollar industry. More than 20 years later, her children found out. Their lives would never be the same. This is a super good nonfiction read. If you like science, I would not say that I'm someone who reads a lot of science books. This is fascinating. I picked up a copy of A Study in Charlotte. This was one that I think I picked up at the thrift store, but you can see it's still got the Target 20% off sticker on the front. It also is the edition for Target. It's got Target's Club Pick. I think I read this also last summer. It's a Charlotte Holmes, as in Sherlock Holmes. Charlotte is a descendant of Sherlock. I love this book. I picked up a copy of Sharon Draper's Out of My Mind. This is a super good read. I have a copy of The Henna Artist. Reese's Book Club sent it to me last summer, so I picked up this extra copy for the classroom. I think I have already recommended this one to you. I love it. I finally picked up a copy of Left Behind. I had a paperback copy here. I think I had a paperback copy at school. So I have this nice hardback copy that I picked up. Super glad to have that one. I know I've talked to you about that series before. Major Pettigrew's Last Stand. I love this book. This is a great hard copy edition. Who is this published by? Why can't I? Oh, Random House. It's by Helen Simonson. I love this book. I have such good warm feelings of this book, so highly recommend. So I think all of those are books that I've already read, so maybe that's why I have those pulled out separately. So I know I've said it before as I'm rearranging some books here for you. I know I've said it before, I like to own copies of the books that I've read. If I read a book and I don't already own the copy, I'm always on the lookout at the thrift store to pick up a copy. I like to do that so that when I'm recommending a book to you, I can loan those out. I love to loan out my books. And then I also just like to return to them. And I'm often talking about books with people, talking about books in the classroom, and I just think there's so much to say for whenever I have the visual, when I'm like, hey, you know what book I think you'd really like is Major Pettigrew's Last Stand. Here's a copy, just give it back whenever, right? And then if I don't get it back, I mean, what? I probably spent $2 on it at the thrift store. It's not a big deal. Some of those go on my bookshelves here. Some of those are duplicate copies that I will be sending to my classroom. Oops, looks like I need to add in there Nicholas Sparks' The Wedding. Pretty sure I already have a copy of this, so this is probably for the classroom. I'm sure I've talked to you about Nicholas Sparks before. This is a copy that looks like it came from Ollie, but look at that edition. It's a copy of Dracula. Again, I think I have a copy here and in the classroom, so this will probably just be an additional one for here. But it's a beautiful classic edition. I love it. I love the red tip pages. It's got this nice plastic cover, dust jacket to it, so you actually get to see the book. So really cool looking. I'm sure I'll pull that back out and talk to you about that in the fall. All right, so oops. This is another one that I picked up. I think I've already read this. Have I already read A Night Without Armor, Poems by Drool? No, I didn't. Sorry. I picked it up because I thought I had read it, so I was going to put it in the library, or put it in my classroom, but I actually have not read this. I had a copy of it in my library at school, and I think it's been on my to-be-read list, so I need to read this one first and then probably throw that one into the classroom at school. So, Jewel. I also like that Jewel now is playing in... she's playing one of Kate Carlisle's characters in her books, her cozy mysteries that are being done on Hallmark's Movies and Mysteries. It's the Fixer Upper series. So Jewel plays the main character in that. And I love all things Kate Carlisle. I picked up a copy of Alicia Keys' Tears for Water Songbook of Poems and Lyrics. So it looks interesting. I thought that might be a good addition to my classroom library. This is a vintage one that I thought was a really cool one. I just can't let these things go either. It says The Family Game Book. It smells like someone has started a fire. So let me just make sure that that's a controlled fire out there somewhere. Okay. We live at a lake, so it's kind of like a slash between some people who vacation here, some people who, like us, who live here all the time. But there's always a little something going on. But it appears that the neighbors have just started a small fire. Who knows why? No judgment area. Anyhow, so this little vintage find here, it's the family game book. I thought it looked kind of like Partridge Family-ish. I thought it was cool. So the dust jacket's a little torn up, but it's a cute one. Divided by age groups, the family game book is a veritable grab bag of hundreds of tested games and educational activities designed for first-class family entertainment within reach of everyone's pocketbook. So I just thought it looked really cute. It's also illustrated, so just super cute. All right, let's move on. How Good Do We Have to Be by Harold Kushner. I've not read this one. I have read two, I think, books by him. One of them being When Bad Things Happen to Good People. But this is a new understanding of guilt and forgiveness, so this looks really good. Looking forward to reading that one. I have this in the high school library at school, so I just picked it up to take a look-see here. We'll probably put it in the classroom. But it's Tan Lines, a summer novel by Catherine Applegate. Looks like a fun summer read. Meg Cabot's Ready or Not. I haven't read this one by her, but I've read many of hers. This is an All-American Girl novel. Jane Green. You can tell Stella's enjoying her new bone. Jane Green, The Sunshine Sisters. So that looks like, again, a good summer read. Ronnie Sunshine left London for Hollywood to become a beautiful, charismatic star of the silver screen. But at home, she was a narcissistic, disinterested mother who alienated her 3 daughters. Still, when Ronnie learns that she has a serious disease, she calls her now adult girls home to fulfill her final wishes. And though Nell, Meredith, and Lizzie have never been close, their mother's illness draws them together to confront the old jealousies and secret fears that have threatened to tear these sisters apart. As they face the loss of their mother, they will discover if blood might be thicker than water after all. You know what? I don't know. It's a lot of those summer beachy reads. Someone always has some serious illness, and there's a lot of family friction. Why is that? I don't know. Maybe because it's the eternal story. But yeah, so picked that one up by Jane Green, putting that in my summer stack. Also in my summer stack, Ellen Hildebrand, What Happens in Paradise. She's the author of The Summer of '69 and Winter in Paradise. So this is a pretty popular series. I think I've read some Ellen Hildebrand, but definitely looks like a summer read. I picked up Kate Morton's The Clockmaker's Daughter. This is actually a signed copy that I picked up at Thrift. I've read some more Kate Morton's, and I remembered really liking those. She wrote The Forgotten Garden, which I believe our book club did. I picked up a copy of Louise Penny's Kingdom of the Blind. So this I need to get on the list because this is part of the Armand Gamage series. It's number 14, and I know that there's a new one coming out. I have reviewed some Louise Penny for you before. I also recommended, what's the name of it? One of hers is a movie on Acorn that's super good, and it has Armand Gamache in it, if I'm not mistaken. Twin Pines, something like that. Three Pines. What's it called? Something like that. But it was a super good movie, and I know I've recommended that one to you, but I plan to read this one. This is definitely on my summer reading list. And then the last one, yes, I'm a sucker. I definitely judge a book by its cover, and look at that cover. Look at that cover. It's called Sunburn. It says it's a thriller. It's by Lawrence Shames. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of Lawrence Shames, but if you're going to put a dog in glasses using a walker and then cover that with palm trees, I'm reading it. So this is definitely on my to be read list. So there's a quick run through my recent book haul. There are 3 books that I did want to talk to you about real quick that I picked up at the public library. So let me set these down and grab those. So our public library at Blanchester Public Library, has reopened their doors. So, you know, they're still making sure they don't have a ton of people in there at one time. They're still asking you to social distance, but they are open. So every time I go in, it's just too tempting not to walk out with some books to look at. A lot of times I pick up books from there that I want to preview or look through, but maybe I'm not ready to purchase, but I think I might want to purchase, and that's what some of these are. So this is called The Enchanted Hour. It's The Miraculous Power of Reading Aloud in the Age of Distraction. It's by Megan Cox Gordon, and I just thought this is one that I probably need to take a look-see through, because I do read quite a bit to my classes, and I just need a little background on that. I also picked up this really cool one. It's called The Infographic Guide to Grammar. I know that that is one of the places that I struggle, so I taught a little more grammar than I thought I was going to this year, and I thought this had some really interesting infographics that I might be able to refer to in the coming year. And then the last one is The Listening Path, The Creative Art of Attention. It's by Julia Cameron. I am still working my way through The Artist's Way. I started it a number of years ago, and every summer I pick it back up, review, and do a couple more weeks. I need to finish it up this summer. I think that I probably will get there, but this is one of her newer books, and it's all about creativity. So those are the 3 that I picked up at the public library. So let's talk a little book news. I need to update my book news book page on my website, so I know I linked to that in the show notes, but I need to update that. It's on my summer list of things to do. So Homer Hickam has a new book, and I have The Colwood Way by Homer Hickam. It's a memoir. I already have this book. I've picked it up somewhere along the way. So that is on my reading list. And I have Rocket Boys by Homer Hickam. And again, this was already on my shelf, so throwing those out there. But why am I mentioning Homer Hickam? Well, for 2 reasons. Number 1, he has a new book out. It's called Don't Blow Yourself Up by Homer Hickam. And it is available on pre-order right now on Amazon. But the actual publication date is October 19th of this fall. You know, you will recognize Rocket Boys because they made it into the movie October Sky. It's the first one, I believe it's the first one in the series. And then The Colwood Way, I think, is the second one. So these are memoirs. I need to read them. But we read Carrying Albert Home, which is another book by Homer Hickam. It's fiction with some basis in reality. And when our book club did that book, I don't remember, a couple years ago, I can't remember how it actually transpired. I think I reviewed it on Goodreads maybe, and the author responded to me, and then I said we were doing it with book club, and he said, you know, I'd love to talk to your book club. So I don't think it was Zoom. I have no idea what we did. Maybe we Skyped, whatever we did. We met in the Schoolhouse restaurant down in Milford. They had a little area upstairs. We went up there, and you know, if only we had known what masters we would become of the Zoom world back then. But I think we Skyped with him, and it was a lovely experience. He was so good to our book club. It was just a great conversation. He was very down to earth. So how about that? A video with 2 author meetings, talking about them in the same episode. But my gosh, it was just so good. We loved talking to him. He was a great storyteller. So I'm very excited that his new one is coming out. I need to read the 2 ones that I have right now, but I did want to mention that in book news that he has a new one coming out this fall. I don't think I have a copy of Carrying Albert Home, but it was so fun. I really liked it. It talks about the story of this person who is transporting an alligator, crocodile. Which one is he? An alligator or crocodile? The somewhat true story of a man, his wife, and their alligator. So it's an alligator, and they're transporting this alligator, and it's a pet alligator. And like I said, some of the story is based in his actual stories. So just super interesting. Highly recommend it. So what else in book news? Oh, I know, when I was at the book loft, I saw that Rupi Kaur, who I just talked to you about in the episode 18, that she has a new one out there. It was called Homebody. So again, I saw it. I didn't buy it, but that is definitely one that I would like to pick up, read, and then see if that's one that I want to put on my shelf. But I really like her writing, and I did see that she has that new one called Homebody. I talked to you about Milk and Honey in episode 18, the last one, and then also I think in episode 10. There's a new Kate Carlisle coming out. That is big book news. So remember, I'm one of Kate's readers. Nope, sorry, here it is finally. I keep telling you, like, I gotta find out what we call ourselves. Here's my letter, and it says, Dear Kate's Rater, R-A-T-E-R, because we do rate her books. This says that I should be receiving a copy of Little Black Book sometime in June, so haven't received that yet, but I am all caught up in the Bibliophile Mysteries. Here's my little librarian cheat sheet, like I tell you that I had. So I am all caught up in the Bibliophile Mystery series. The last one that I read was in, is that true? The last Kate Carlisle that I read was Grim Reader. No, because I went back, that's right. So I was catching up. So it looks like in April I finished Books of a Feather, and that was the last one that I still needed to read to catch up in the Bibliophile Mystery series. So then number 15 will be coming out this month, and I will read and review that one very quickly to get that information out to her. I have read all of the Fixer Upper Mystery series, the last one being in January of this year. I read Premeditated Murder and reviewed that one for you. So love Kate Carlisle and looking forward to that one coming out. I reviewed a lot of her books for you. So I know I've talked to you about Kate Carlisle in a number of videos. It looks like back in adult video number 4, and then 11, 12, and 15, 15, 16, 17, 18. I've talked to you about a number of her books. And she is definitely an author that I would like to just pull all the books down here and talk to you about all of them in its own separate video. So something in the works. Robin Carr has a series called Virgin River. I have not read it, but I watched season 1 and 2. Season 3 is coming out on July 9th. I feel like I already talked to you about Agatha Christie's Crooked House, but I'm not sure if I did or not. So I'm just going to throw out there again. It's on Roku, which we get for free through our smart TV. I don't really know how that all works, but you know, there's, when you first turn it on, you can go to a search and you can look for Crooked House, and then it tells you what platform it's on, and ours connects to Roku, and we get that for free. So I watched that again, and I think maybe I mentioned it before, and then I wanted to review it. I don't know. Anywho, highly, highly recommend it. It's a fabulous adaptation of Agatha Christie's Crooked House. I feel like it's a little longer. Like, it's a pretty long movie, if I'm not mistaken, but totally worth it. Like, I thought I remembered who the culprit was, but as I'm watching it, I'm like, now how does that work? I mean, I remember reading this, and I think I've already even watched an adaptation, but I don't think it was that one that I watched before. But I'm pretty sure I know who's guilty, but how is that going to work? So just in true Agatha Christie form, kept me guessing till the end, and at the end, you're just, it's so good. Watch it. I already talked about Lauren Oliver's Panic being turned into a Netflix series, so I am reading that one. It is on my to-be-read list. And then also I need to watch the series. Yeah, I think it's a series. It looks like I put a review out there for Before I Fall back in April of this year. So I do have that one reviewed for you on Goodreads. And I reviewed Vanishing Girls back in March of 2017. So those are already out there. So that should catch me up with all of the reviews and Lauren Oliver. I need to watch her Before I Fall, which is just a movie on Netflix. I would read any of her books. I really like her as an author. I saw that Ann Patchett's Belcanto, that's one of the reasons why I pulled that, is that it's on Crackle. I don't know what Crackle is, but again, whenever I search, that's the platform that it throws me over to. So that's on our watch list. And then I linked the article for you about Ann Patchett and her 3 fathers. It's called My 3 Fathers, My Problems Were Never One of Scarcity, I Suffered from Abundance. And it's just beautifully written. I mean, beautifully written. All right, how about a really short, like, here's what I'm currently reading, because I know the video is going to run too long. You know, after I made that last video and it was like an hour and 40 minutes, and I thought, you know what, not a soul is going to watch this video. It is way too long. I'm really sorry. I waited too long to make it. Did the same thing here. So I don't know how long this is going to end, but I remember just when I finished that, I thought, I'm just turning it over to the universe. That is why I'm making these videos. Watch it or don't. Listen to it or don't. But I have a lot I need to say. So I threw that out there, and it's one of my best performing videos. I don't understand the logistics of, you know, why you watch or why you listen, if we're friends in real life or if we're just friends online, or if you, like me, follow all these BookTube people. I don't know. I don't know how it all works. So all I know is that this is what I feel led to do, is talk to you about books, give you recommendations, and I'm going to throw it out there, and whatever happens, happens. So kind of learned my lesson on that last one. I'm trying not to make these so long, but it just is what it is. I can only edit down so much. I need to do them more often. I thought in the summer that we would. I have now been into summer how many weeks? This is the 4th week that I have had of summer, not going to work every day. Just, you know, catching up like I always do every summer. And I can't believe it has taken me 4 weeks to actually do another video. So my game plan, I really thought I was gonna like make a video a week, but that hasn't happened. So I'm gonna try and amp that up a little bit, and I apologize that it is too long, that it's long. Apparently it's not too long because, I don't know, it's worked out. Anywho, let's talk about some books that I'm currently reading. I think I mentioned this little paperback to you before. It's Blockbuster's all-time favorite movies and music. So pretty sure I've mentioned that to you, but we're kind of looking at that this summer, reviewing some of the movies that we've already watched. I like that it breaks it up into action, comedy, drama, family movies, horror, science fiction. Can you hear Stella down there moaning? I like that it does that. So keeping that's on my current reading list. I am returning to this. This is Lord, Teach Me to Study the Bible in 28 Days by Arthur K. Arthur. I've had this book for a long time. I don't even know when I started it. It was on that stack of books that I started and didn't finish. So I have gone back into it. It's 28 days and I'm on day 20. I don't love it. I'll talk to you after I finish it, but you know, I have to finish any book I start. I don't know, I have that disease. I wish I didn't, but I do, because I always feel like as much as I might not love a book, I can always find someone who might love it. There are very few books that I read and just don't recommend to anybody at all. So we'll talk about it once I finish, but I'm currently working my way through that one. The Bibles that I normally use when I'm doing that morning study devotional time, I love my Quest study Bible. I know I've recommended it to you before. And then I also have this single column journaling Bible by Crossway. It's a journaling Bible because it has these sections on the side where you can write, like these columns. So those are the ones that I work with every day. So those are on my currently reading list. I just started yesterday Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And I have borrowed this from a friend, Erickson. I've had it for too long. And I really had wanted to read it and just haven't taken the time to do it. And I started reading it yesterday, and I'm going to have it done in a day or two because it's so good. I also have her newest one. The one is not yet published on NetGalley, so I will be doing that one soon too. And then I am reading The Pioneers, The Heroic Story of the Settlers Who Brought the American Ideal West. It's by David McCullough. This is my next book club read. So those are really the only ones that I have gotten started on so far. I'm not currently reading anything on my Kindle, and I'm not currently listening to anything on audio. I was kind of waiting on that. I had just finished a couple, and I wanted to get through some of my podcasts before I loaded another audiobook because I know how I am. I load them, and then I immediately feel compelled to finish them. So trying to catch up on some podcasts before I do that. So that's the only thing that's currently on my reading right now list. I have a lot to be read, but these are the ones that I'm like right now. I've already gone on longer than I should have probably. So the other ones that are on like my short stack or my summer reading list, I do plan on doing another video on that, but I'm gonna have to break it out because I know I'm already too long on this video. So some other things that I did want to mention. David Sedaris, I am a part of Masterclass. If you're a Masterclass person, I would love to hear from you. But I've done several Masterclass. It's a subscription service. I watch them on my TV, but you can also watch them on your computer, or I even have the app that's just on my phone. They're a series of videos, and they are classes led by people who are experts in their field. So I have done Bobbi Brown. Let me grab that. Bobbi Brown. The Beauty Evolution, like this is the book that I've read by Bobbi Brown. She does a class on makeup, so I've done that one on Masterclass. I did a negotiator series. I want to say his name was Voss. That was super good. Neil Gaiman, who's a famous author, I have listened to his whole series. And then I did one here recently. Oh, what was his name? On plants. Super good. Did I write it down? I didn't. But a guy on plants. It was super good. And so I have just started the David Sedaris one. So I did want to kind of mention to you, I have a couple of Sedaris's books that I need to read. Squirrel Seeks Chipmunk. Super cute. So I'm going to put that one on the short stack. And When You're Engulfed in Flames, I have that one by him. And Naked, I have that one by him. So I have a couple of his books that I have not read. I've read several books by him. Me Talk Pretty One Day. I feel like I have a copy of that one. See what I mean by it's like organic? I'm just constantly pulling things off the shelf. So I did have a copy of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. So the copy that I showed you will be going in the classroom, and this one will go back on the shelf. And then I have a copy of Me Talk Pretty One Day. Looks like I picked it up at a library sale at some point. But this one is super good, super funny. He's a funny guy. And I want to say that I've read a couple of others of his too. I also listened to him several times. Just a good, humorous, funny guy who writes that kind of, it's not fiction. He writes like essays or, I don't know, just memoirs, super good. And his series on Masterclass is phenomenal. I'm really, really enjoying it. So highly recommend Masterclass in addition to the specific ones that I've talked to you about. But I definitely wanted to mention David Sedaris because he is an author. I'll put his books that I've read in my books to review on Goodreads for you and talk about him again in the next video. Somewhere I also have a copy of his Let's Talk Diabetes with Owls. I don't know what that's about, but I do have a copy of that too. Ron Finley is the name of the guy that does the gardening series. I wanted to recommend to you, I think I've talked to you about ASMR in the past, and I just wanted to recommend to you, there's a series that's called Calm by Nature. So as you're reading, it's a great way to set like your timer to make sure that you're reading for that hour a day or whatever time that you make up for yourself. To put that in the background, it's a good way to kind of keep track without, you know, having your phone or some kind of device back so that you constantly feel like you're looking at a clock. So I just wanted to recommend Calm by Nature. It's a great channel on YouTube of ASMR. In addition to my coffee cup here, I don't have a drink of the day today. I started off with coffee, just plain Folgers caramel drizzle with some hazelnut creamer, I believe. And then I've just been refilling it with tea and lemonade, so an Arnold Palmer. I just keep refilling it with that. But I have visited a number of coffee shops here in the last little bit that I would highly recommend to you. My number 129th coffee shop was Adesso. It's out in Mason. I went with a couple of girlfriends on a Saturday right when summer started. Super good. Harvest Market down in Milford. It's in addition to having a great coffee bar. They have a lot of organic groceries, so it's just a destination place. Like, go and plan to spend some time looking around. They have a cool place there. When we were in Michigan, I visited a place called Java Junk. So it had a coffee shop in a thrift store. Super nice guy. Got an iced coffee. It was delicious. I went to a coffee shop called Essos Coffee there in Michigan. And then when we were in Columbus, I tried the Staff's Coffee in, what's that called? The North Market. It was okay. Wasn't great, but it was okay. And then I visited Highline Coffee, which is on High Street. Was it when we were in the Clintonville? I think it was Clintonville Farmers Market. We went to those two battling farmers markets there, Clintonville and whatever the other one is. Why can I not think of that? Anywho, Highline Coffee was there. Super, super good. So, so good. And then we also visited a coffee truck the next day when we went to, oh, I can't think of the name of the place, but there was like this little flea market kind of thing. But the coffee truck was called Honey Cup Coffee, and that was really super cute. A couple of podcasts that I want to throw out there to you. And if right now you are back talking me and you're saying, hey lady, you're supposed to be talking about books, just keep in mind that I am not just a librarian, I am a media specialist, and in with media, there are books, there are podcasts, there is music, there are movies, there are all kinds of different medias that tell stories, and that's what I'm all about. So, podcasts. A couple that I really want to put out there and recommend to you, Sasquatch Chronicles. I'll link the episode in the notes, but I don't know, how did I come across this? I have no idea, but it's great. I love it. It's people telling their stories about their encounters with something that they don't know what to identify it as, so we are thinking that it must be Bigfoot, it must be Sasquatch. I love the storytelling aspect of it. So highly recommending that one, specifically episode 755, The Most Terrifying Night. Park Predators, which I think I may have mentioned to you before, has come out with season 2. That's a super good true crime podcast that takes place in parks. So if I've got my true crime people here listening today, listen to Park Predators. It is so good, and season 2 is out there. I did listen to Counterclock, that podcast that was recommended to me, and my gosh, I don't know why I've waited this long, but I listened to season 3. I need to go back and do season 1 and 2, but season 3 is phenomenal. It's not like My Favorite Murder where you have the humor intermixed with that. And My Favorite Murder is, now that we've gotten to know the hosts, they talk and ramble on about stuff that's not true crime forever. And because I've been listening to it for so long, I'm perfectly fine with that. And it's entertaining. In Counterclock, it is just, here is the crime, here is the evidence, here's the story. You need to figure out what you believe is true. And I think that's super interesting. And then I would also like to recommend to you A Beautiful Mess podcast, specifically episode 95, where they talk about things to do in Nashville. So if you're a traveler, especially this summer, if you're going to Nashville on vacation, listen to that episode. And take it with a grain of salt. Everybody has their favorites, but I enjoy that podcast. Emma and Elsie, I should know that since that is technically my first name, but Emma and Elsie are talking in there about all their Nashville favorites. Actually, I feel like it's not Emma. I think Emma is on maternity leave. I think it's another friend of Elsie's that's doing that Nashville episode, pretty sure. So once again, thanks for joining me today. I am happy to be your friendly librarian. I hope to continue doing that, whether you're watching or you're just listening. Just dip in and out. Let's talk about some books and get some book love out there. All the books that I talk about, I am either already have reviews on Goodreads, or if I mention them in the shows, I make a note and they are added to my stack of books to be reviewed on Goodreads. I know I need to get caught up on a couple of those. I'm lagging a little bit behind, but I'm working on it. And anything that I review on Goodreads, I throw over to Facebook. So follow me on something to keep up with all that book news. Remember that you can get access to any of the books that I talk about for free. That is one of the great things about reading. We now have access to so many different ways to read or listen or borrow, or find a friend like me who owns so many, and you can just come and use us for a library. I'm happy to loan out my books. Most of the time I get them back, and I'm okay with that. But most of these books you can get from your public library. Support your public library. Also support your authors. So purchasing those books from C.A. Newsome, or Carol Newsome. Like when we met her in the park, she brought books for us, and a number of our people purchased copies of her books. Support your local authors. Support your authors. But I have to say, like, there's no way I can pay retail for all the books that I read. I have to get them for thrift or from the library in order to keep up with the amount of books that I read. Let's be social. Make sure you connect with me on Facebook, Goodreads, Instagram. I try and always put a picture of the book that I'm currently reading on Instagram, and I always throw my reviews onto Facebook. So wherever you want to connect with me, let's be social and be friends. Hit that subscribe and like button so that I know you're following along. Comment, email, message, text me. Just talk to me about books. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you're looking for. Keep in touch. Enjoy, folks.